It's usually on the side.
Here's some more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you gotta go this way.
Hello there.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Hey, guys.
Hey Dave, how you doing?
Good.
We're gonna get started in just a minute here.
Okay. I just finished my hospice meeting, so that worked out well. I tried to enlarge my screen and I erased everything.
I went to the same class.
Because he's mid-month, you know.
I think it's the first of the month, and I think I'm saying that because my husband got on Medicaid a couple years ago. And it seemed like
Start then?
not everybody. Oh, yeah.
There. For some reason, I tried to enlarge my picture and I erased everything for a while.
I mean, it's hard to say. And sometimes those sightings is fluid. And sometimes that happens from malignancy.
I put those links in the
fluid that builds up, it can get pretty uncomfortable.
We have some links in the chat room. Can everybody see those? We have the agenda and a list of items that came in the letters of reasons to oppose this.
Well, he's not having any trouble. He looks better than he did when I admitted him.
Somebody needs to mute their mic. We're getting background noise. It's going to be very important. There's a lot of people on today that we keep our mics muted unless we're speaking. With that, I'll call this meeting to order. First thing I'm going to do is just give you a brief rundown of our agenda for today. This is a public hearing for the Upper West Shore Subdistrict C zoning text amendment. We're going to have the Lake County plan 15 minutes to make a presentation. And the Upper West Shore Alliance was allowed 15 minutes, but they said they're not going to require that, and they'll just make a comment from the audience. I will read through the list of comments already received. If you agree with this list, please just state your name and that you oppose the text amendment based on comments submitted. If you have new comments not listed, you will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. We'll next have public comment. We'll have the proponents first and then the opponents. We'll then have board discussion and the board decision. If the decision is to deny this, there will be no further proceedings. If the commissioners pass a resolution of intention to adopt the text amendment, There will be a 30-day comment period. Only comment from persons owning real property in the sub-district C will be received per Senate Bill 294. And the public hearing, consideration of real property owners' comments, and then we'll vote on the resolution of adoption at that time. So that will be a meeting approximately 30 days after this one, if it is, if the resolution is adopted. So with that, it is legal for you to record this meeting, either audio or visual, but you are supposed to notify us if you are. Is there anybody doing that at this time? This meeting is being recorded. You'll be able to access and get access this online once it's all finished up.
Yes, I am. Audio recording.
And your name, please?
Shannon. Last name is Olant, O-L-A-N-D-T.
Thank you.
I'm also trying to record.
And your name?
Tonya, Tonja. Last name is Gies, Gies.
Thank you.
I'm also recording.
And your name, please?
Vanessa Perez.
Thank you.
And I'm also recording.
And your name?
Jordan Johnson, JAURDYN
Thank you.
I'm also recording Michelle Lamando Patterson.
It's not necessary to spell your names. We can get them on the screen. So thank you.
And David Passieri.
Thank you. Okay. With that,
Ingrid Lovers.
lovers, okay? It's obvious there's going to be a lot of people recording. So I guess this is good enough for now. We know that there's going to be other recordings out there of this, so we'll go with that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is read through this list, and I just condensed this from the letters we got, and I didn't do it from each letter. I because a lot of the letters had the same comments or very similar comments, so I just tried to get all the different comments that were listed. And when it comes time for public comment, if your item hasn't been listed, you will be given an opportunity to talk. So
You want the staff report first?
before this,
I think that's.
yeah, let's do staff report first. Thank you.
I'm Tiffany Murphy with the Lake County Planning staff, and I'll be presenting this report today. So in this report, there is both the planning staff's original report and findings and recommendation, as well as the findings and recommendation from the planning board. Today, I'll be reading the planning board's recommendation and findings.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Yeah, sorry, I can try. So the planning board made their recommendation for denial based on the public comment provided at the meeting. And but prior to the meeting, all of the comments that were sent in and any findings they made in relation to the growth policy. So I'll be presenting their findings and report today to the commissioners, not the planning staff's original report. However, my original report is in this document. So this is for the Torsten and Jessica Weddle. Their applicants are proposing to amend the language of the Upper West Shore Zoning District Regulations, Subdistrict C, to allow for commercial uses as a conditional use, limited to outdoor recreational activities, provided the primary entrance to the adventure area or attraction is within 500 feet of the right-of-way of Highway 93. Currently, commercial activities other than home vacation rentals, and bed and breakfasts are prohibited within Subdistrict C. The applicants are requesting that part of this amendment include a definition for outdoor recreational activities, which state commercial activity limited to outdoor recreational adventure activities involving the provision for recreational facilities or activities where the primary intended use is to provide recreational outdoor activities for sport for a fee in a natural environment, not in a building or indoor facility. Examples of land use that qualify under this definition are activities that produce zero emissions, such as nature observation areas, axe throwing, outdoor tactical laser tags and miniature golf, gem mining, rope courses and zip lines, summer day camps, tubing hills, and mountain rides. Examples of land use that do not qualify under this definition are swimming pools, water slides, water parks, campgrounds, RV parks, ski resorts, and other commercial resorts. The applicants have an outdoor recreational commercial proposal for their personal property. And if this amendment was approved, the applicants would have to come back for a conditional use to have their plan approved by the Board of Adjustment prior to any construction taking place on their lot. The Planning Board held their public hearing on April 14th, 2021, in which the planning staff presented their proposed zone change. Public comment was taken and a recommendation was made. There was significant public comment provided on the proposal, with the majority being against the proposed change. Board members asked several questions to the planning staff and applicants, as well as held discussion amongst themselves. The board voted for denial of the proposed zone change, with all members voting being unanimous. Again, the planning staff is presenting the board's findings and recommendation. The planning staff's original finding and recommendations are included in this report. If the commissioners chose to approve the applicant's proposal, findings are in this report, in which the commissioners could choose to adopt. If they choose to deny, the findings are also there from the planning board's recommendations. I'm going to page 5 and present the findings of fact as found by the planning board. The first one, A, conformity to the 2018 Lake County Growth Policy. Small businesses do exist in the area, including a restaurant, gas station, vacation rentals, grocery store, and other small locally owned shops and commercial establishments. None of those are within Subdistrict C. They're within other subdistricts of the Upper West Shore Zoning District. The potential for allowing outdoor recreational commercial operations with a conditional use approval could bring additional tourism to the area, while tourism could add additional customers to those existing businesses, which could support the local economy. Encouraging commercial activity in Subdistrict D, where commercial is already allowed, would be more appropriate for the area. B, would congestion be lessened in the streets? The finding was no. With additional commercial uses, congestion would be increased with increased traffic that results from commercial activities, which affects the safety of the area. C, will the new zoning secure safety from fire, panic, and disaster? The property is served by the Lake County Sheriff's Office, and depending on where the commercial activity is located, could be provided other emergency services by either the Rawlins Volunteer Fire Department or Lakeside Emergency Services. Subdistrict C is located at the north end of Lake County. Difficulties with volunteer services and lengthy response times create additional hazards that could be unsafe. The distance from the highway to the commercial activity could also create additional hazards. Item D, will the new zoning promote health and general welfare? The finding, increased traffic, noise, lighting, and dust with commercial development would degrade the general health and welfare of the residents of the area, based on the testimony of the public at the meeting. Item E, will the new zoning provide adequate light and air? All future development would need to conform to the Upper West Shore zoning regulations and the detailed regulations contained therein. A condition of approval of any future development or conditional use approval would be a requirement for downward point and side shield lighting. If the Board of Adjustment felt it was a concern based on the individual project review, it could also be possible that dust mitigation would be required. Item F, will the new zoning prevent overcrowding of land and avoid the concentration of people? The finding, no, it would increase overcrowding and overconcentration of people because commercial development is a high density land use. G, would the request zoning facilities the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewage, school, parks, and other public requirements? There was no change from the planning staff's finding. Streets. All access to the Subdistrict C would be off Highway 93. A comment from MDOT would be required to accompany any conditional use application, and any requirements from MDOT would need to be installed prior to the issuance of zoning conformance permit. If any county roads would be impacted by the proposal, then comments from the Lake County Roads Department would be required as well. If private roads were impacted, any private road agreements or easements would be required to be addressed as part of the conditional use process. For sewer and water facilities, that finding was that sewer and water are reviewed by the Lake County Environmental Health Departments and/or MDEQ for all projects within Lake County. Part of the conditional use and zoning conformance process is that Environmental Health Department reviews all comments on planning department applications. If a permit or approval is required by either Environmental Health or MDEQ, the planning department is made aware of it prior to a conditional use being taken place at the Board of Adjustment. Any conditional use application would have to meet all of the requirements from Environmental Health and MDEQ prior to the issuance of the zoning conformance permit. Schools. The proposal states that the need being met is economic and target tourism. The tourist season is during the summer months while school is not in session. Further, a large portion of the people who would support the business would likely be transient and therefore would have little impact on the number of school children in the system. Additional tax revenue could actually benefit the school system. However, if commercial use expands outside of the summer months, it could potentially harm the school system, and those impacts may not be covered by the additional tax revenue. Parks. There are no park or parkland requirements to address. Police protection. The subject property is located within the Lake County Sheriff's Department jurisdiction. The Sheriff's Department has commented on several previous projects that within their jurisdiction, they typically respond to non-emergency calls on a priority basis within an hour, but may take longer. The change from an almost strictly residential zoning district to a district that allows for outdoor recreational commercial activity does have the potential to create the need for additional police services on the property. Any applicant could provide their own private security to help reduce the burden on Lake County emergency services. Fire protection. Increased human activity in forested areas does increase the potential for fire hazards due to additional vehicle use within vegetated areas, smoking, electrical fires, and other human activity. Both Rollins and Lakeshore have volunteer fire departments that could respond to an emergency within areas of Subdistrict C if required. Fire departments for the area are voluntary and response times are unpredictable. Stormwater drainage. For the Upper West Shore zoning regulations, all development must have stormwater control on their own properties. It must be managed without causing harm to the natural environment, water quality, or adjacent properties. Due to the steep nature of the landscape in Subdistrict C, stormwater would be more difficult to control with commercial activities than for residential development. Any property applying for a conditional use permit would have to demonstrate how stormwater will be addressed, maintained, and controlled. H, how will new zoning give reasonable consideration to the character of the district? No, the character of the district is residential. Commercial uses are allowed within other subdistricts within the Upper West Shore, but not within the subdistrict. Due to the increased traffic, noise, and congestion that commercial development brings, this activity is not suitable for the area. I, does the requested zone give reasonable consideration to the peculiar suitability of the property for a particular use? Based on the aerial images of the property, they have heavily timbered and some are fairly steep, which makes them unsuitable for commercial development. J, will the new zoning conserve the value of buildings? Commercial activities on the property adjacent to the residential properties could lower existing property values due to noise, light, sound, appearances, etc. The guidelines for which conditional use application would be reviewed and approved would need to have criteria for lighting, buffering, hours of operation, and other aspects in order to protect property values. K, will the new zoning encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout the municipality? This area is not suitable for commercial development. With any development, some thinning of vegetation and disturbance will take place. However, typically commercial development would be more demanding on the natural environment as it requires additional parking, utilities, and infrastructure. Even an outdoor commercial facility will require parking areas and larger bathroom facilities to accommodate larger numbers of people than a typical single-family residence. Legal notice and adjoining property owners. Legal notice for the commissioners meeting was posted in 6 locations within the district as required by state law. It was also published in the Lake County Leader on May 6th and May 13th. All of the public comments for the planning board meeting were forwarded to the Lake County commissioners, as well as any additional public comment that was received by the planning department. Public comment had been continued to be accepted up until May 18th, the day of today's meeting. The findings of the planning board, after hearing the planning staff's presentation and comments from the applicants, the public, as well as reviewing the site application, the Lake County growth policy, and the Upper West Shore zoning regulations, state law, and related information, the Lake County Planning Board found that the zoning text amendment for the subject property was not reasonable when considering the use, location, size, and history of the subdistrict, as well as surrounding land uses and other subdistricts. Therefore, the planning board recommended that the Lake County commissioners deny the zoning amendment with supportive findings of fact. And that concludes step 4.
Okay. With that, I will give the applicants 15 minutes to respond.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioner Decker, and Commissioner Stipe. I appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you today. I learned today that I had 15 minutes, so I'm going to have to rush my presentation somewhat in order to address this. And I had expected the planning staff to present the findings of fact that they actually made versus the planning board's conclusory statements, but I will do my best to cover that area within the time allotted.
How much time did you plan on having?
If I could have 20 to 25 minutes, I can cover my ground.
Based on the fact that the other attorney doesn't need a full 15 minutes, I will give you 20 to 25 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll do my best to complete it within that time or sooner, but I would like to first introduce you to Jessica Weddle. Jessica is the applicant. Her husband, Torsten, was not able to be here today with us today, and I'm here to present their position on why they believe that this zoning text amendment is appropriate. And we think that if you look at with scrutiny the planning board report, and particularly the findings of fact of your planning professionals, your planning staff, you will see that their proposed text amendment for use of an outdoor recreation venue, subject to the self-imposed restrictions that are written into the text language itself, in addition to the regulations that already exist and are not being changed by this proposed text amendment, provide a reasonable use of this land as a conditional use, just another possible potential use for this land. I believe, and the Weddles believe, that the proposed outdoor recreational activity that they're presenting complements and supplements the diverse recreational and natural treasures that exist here in Flathead Lake, and particularly in the South and West Shore communities. We don't believe that its potential installation would be of a manner that would show disrespect or change the rural character of this area. It certainly will not spoil it. And we just want you to consider the benefit as a whole to your community that this conditional use option would provide for residents and visitors to enjoy kind of a unique outdoor experience that, by the way, is funded by private investment that will support and not compete with adjacent commercial business in the Highway 93 corridor, and will actually also complement it as well. There's three main areas that I want to draw your attention to, and I hope that you've had the opportunity to read my May 17th letter and to review the map. I'm going to do my best not to repeat some of those statements, but the themes that I developed in that May 17th letter to you are generally summarized as follows. That the conditional use is consistent with your growth policy as amended in 2018, and is consistent with the surrounding allowed and conditional uses, including those within subdistricts A and D. And I'll go into that in detail as we move forward. We also believe that the analysis and substantiated findings of fact that were objectively developed by your planning board, or excuse me, your planning staff, and their adjoining recommendation to approve the text amendment supports passing at least a notice of resolution of intent to amend subdistrict C to allow for commercial outdoor recreation. If you are willing to do that, at least then the affected landowners may opt to protest. They will have a protest right. They may hear new things, learn new things today, and in the discussion that follows at a future hearing, if you adopt an intention, that may change their mind. And they may learn that this project is far less scary to them or over-encompassing or commercial of nature to them than they may perceive as we sit here today. It is still a very restrictive conditional use. We also want to relay the general theme that the planning boards, I can't call them findings of facts objectively because I'm not certain what facts they identify in their statements. They simply disagree with the facts and the analysis that's presented by your planning staff and draw a contrary conclusion. So we're talking about an interpretation of fact, perhaps, and we're talking about a bias. And what I'm asking you as the commissioners today is to maybe remove some of those biases as you listen to what further we have to say in support of this. I will address in detail now the findings of fact that the planning staff presented with more focus on their findings rather than those of the planning board. With respect to the finding A, proposed amendment has the potential to encourage growth of the local economy and would support local existing businesses, encourage new businesses. What we're talking about here is a synergy and a non-competition with existing businesses that would service local and tourist visitors to this outdoor recreational venue. A lot of talk has been placed on tourists and how this is going to draw in tourists and overcrowd with tourists. Not very much talk from either your staff or your board has focused on how this attraction would serve the children in our community, the children in Polson, people who live here year-round, people, not just the weekend recreators, not just the visitors during the summer seasons, not just the tourists that come in, the warmer weather tourists that come in that would utilize this, but your greater community's use. And I think that this type of limited outdoor recreation would also service the many homes, the many short-term rentals, the many church camps, the many retreat center visitors that you already have in the area that have very little to do within minutes of their home if they're in sub-district C or D or B, unless they wish to travel several miles, unless they have access to the lake and they're involved in water activity. The planning board commentary does acknowledge that allowing outdoor recreation commercial operations with a conditional use approval could bring additional tourism into the area. That is true, but this isn't a stay and play. This is not a lodge. This is not a restaurant. This conditional use does not offer accommodation. There will not be overnight stay. It is a unique stop along the way of the current traffic flow and highway corridor of Highway 93. It's very different than a destination overnight amusement park that's been referenced. It is nothing like an amusement park in that respect. With respect to the issue of congestion and traffic safety, of course, the Weddles and any other affected property owner who would seek this conditional use permit and have to access highway is going to have to provide some sort of traffic study. They're going to have to get DOT application permit process, hire engineers, 8 turn lanes. They may have to create shoulders. They may have to have a sufficient distance, and certainly within 500 feet distance to the main entrance. Those who are exiting be able to queue before they enter the recreation venue, but not within the Highway 93 corridor. We all know the DOT is not going to allow that. And I think there's sufficient protection for those concerns. I think the planning board just says, with respect to whether congestion and traffic safety would be a concern, it disagrees with planning staff and just says, no, with additional commercial use, congestion will increase with increased
2 o'clock in the morning. Fuck off.
from commercial, which is the area. This is as circular when I say it out loud as when I read it, and it ignores all of the engineering, the planning, and the design that will have to go into this access. I think it's also important to understand that with respect to fire and general public safety as addressed in section C, that of course, again, the Weddles or any developer that has land that qualifies within subsection C for an outdoor activity is going to have emergency response and evacuation plans in place. They're going to have first aid ability. They're going to have employees who are trained to address those types of emergencies, right? They're also going to affect the property value, potentially increase the property value, potentially create an opportunity for additional fees and funding to local volunteer response, emergency response folks as they are servicing any needs they have. And I would just say that any human activity within subsection C that currently exists poses the same potential concern about distance of travel to address the emergency and response, but yet we've allowed that growth pattern and that growth to occur. This type of outdoor recreation venue can be part of a solution to help funding and addressing those concerns rather than something that aggravates it or makes it worse. In addressing finding of fact D, whether the text amendment would promote general health and welfare, the planning staff recognized that the type of example outdoor activities that are being proposed here do reduce the associated health risks such as injury, but might increase noise, lighting, and dust. But yet I would tell you that, as the planning staff noted, that the noise, lighting, and dust would be addressed as part of a permitting process. And the Weddles agree, any application under this proposal would have to address those concerns. And those concerns are already addressed in your regulations that are not being changed pertaining to outdoor lighting, buffer strip, and other design criteria that any applicant would still have to comply with in order to move forward with a zoning permit. Those concerns will be addressed. And if they're not sufficiently addressed, they're not going to get a zoning permit. In this finding, the planning board just assumed that increased traffic, noise, lighting, and dust with commercial development would degrade the general health and welfare of the residents. And the Weddles and I disagree about this, and this is one example of that fear-based assumption that just because it's commercial in nature, that it's going to increase noise, increase dust, increase light pollution. We're not talking about a large retail commercial outlet store. We're not talking about a sawmill. We're not talking about 24/7 operation. We're talking about an outdoor recreation venue that would have to present and address these specific concerns with noise studies, would have to address the dust concern with the questions pertaining to dust mitigation, and particularly the entrance road and the hard surface of that road to the parking area. Those practical things would be addressed in an actual application for development. They can't, this is just pure assumption in a conclusory determination or finding that this is going to create some sort of noise or dust disturbance, or that lights can't be directed downward or can't be turned off at night during operations. This is outdoor operating activity, not indoor with a major light system that creates an opportunity for folks to recreate all the time. Both the planning board and the staff acknowledge that adequate light and air, of course, would have to be provided consistent with the zoning district regulations. And because this is an outdoor activity, we're very certain that that can be accomplished. The other finding that I want to address is that the planning board believes that putting an outdoor recreation venue would automatically cause overcrowding and would concentrate people. And the planning board, the planning staff kind of emphasized the proximity of Highway 93, and that if any overcrowding or concentration occurred, it would at least be limited in Highway 93. But I want you to take a step back because I think they both got it wrong. We have an entrance to a property within 500 feet of Highway 93. And we have a parking lot. And from that parking lot where you have concentrated vehicles and cars, you then, at least in the Weddles property, would be dispersing them for outdoor activity over a 7-acre tract and an adjoining 10-acre tract. Dispersing that many people over 17 acres. Is that the concentration that we're worried about? Is that the assumption that we're concentrating people or overcrowding them in one location? Because if that is what we're concerned about, I think you need to think about how your public boat ramps look and how your lakeside public parks look in the summertime, and how the unimproved recreation areas that people access that aren't necessarily created for public access are crowded. That's where the deconcentration happens. That's where the overcrowding happens. And what we're proposing here, or any landowner in this subsection who has land that could qualify, is to pull some of those folks away from those crowded venues, give them another option that is not water-based, and deconcentrate them and reduce that crowding in a safe and healthful manner in a way that's not been available to the community in the past. In the discussion of Section G, the transportation, sewer, water facility, parks, schools, police, fire protection, I think the planning board and the planning staff adequately covered those issues in the context that any permit for development is going to have to show that there are not negative effects here, or if there are, that they can be sufficiently mitigated. So I'm not going to spend time on those today. What I do want to spend more time on is that this proposal does give reasonable consideration to the Upper West Shore zoning district and the various subsections, and particularly subsection C. And I think if you look closely, both your planning board and your planning staff kind of got this part of this story wrong. In the larger scale, the Upper West Side zoning district, subdistricts A and D, they all do allow a sliding scale of commercial activity, either as a permissible use or as a conditional use. And so let's be intellectually honest about what that sliding scale looks like. It includes, in every district, state licensed short-term vacation rental. What we're talking about is lakeside and lakefront homes and guest house cabins, often adjacent to servicing docks for watercraft on lake. That, gentlemen, is akin to commercial lodging use. That is a commercial use that is allowed in every district as we speak, including subsection C. Subsections A and D, in addition to the residential and vacation short-term rental, also allow as conditional uses home occupation, bed and breakfast, guest house rental, and even business signs advertising these non-residential uses. I suppose we can argue whether a bed and breakfast is a residential use or a guest house rental is a residential use, but what we probably can't argue is that many of them are rented VRBO. Many of them are rented to extended family members, friends of friends. They're advertised on the internet. They're probably advertised in your newspaper. Commercial activity is happening throughout the Upper West Side District already. And in a conditional use context. What this conditional use is proposing is an outdoor recreational activity of a commercial use, but of a nature that does not convert or change the primary bias of your district to be for residential use, is consistent with the already allowed commercial uses, whether we call them commercial use or not, of renting out the cabins, the homes, even additional units. If they come to you for permission, I believe they can rent out more than 2 units in those districts. We're talking about a soft commercial use that services and complements, does not compete, and does not expand any of the current uses to convert them to a larger scale commercial use. Because if you look at the map, as I presented to you in my May 17th letter, and I don't know if we're able to pull that up for the viewers. So if there's a capability that the county has to do that, it's the last page. Did the commissioners have a chance to review that letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got it.
So I don't want to keep members of the public out of this loop here. And what I'm going to do is, if you could rip off the last map and just hand a few of those maps out to the members of the public so they can view that as well. What this map, I think, demonstrates, commissioners, is first of all, that the concern that 4,567 acres are somehow going to be developed into an amusement park is not accurate. We're talking about approximately 250, 260 acres that might qualify within this sub-district for this development, being within 500 feet of the Highway 93 corridor. On top of that, we're also talking about natural restrictions of the upper shore due to the highway cuts, the rocks that exist, the blue area that you see there. That removes another 60% of the linear line of Highway 93 as it passes through this sub-district C. We're probably talking, I know the planning staff identified 20 parcels aerially, visually. I try to go through it myself. I think I see about 12 to 14 possible parcels that could qualify without a natural barrier of that upward slope cut that could be affected by this. We're not talking about 4,000 acres. We're not talking about hundreds of acres. We're not talking about a large scale application. We're talking about very few parcels left within subsection C that this might work with. And I think the public needs to keep that in mind. I know I'm getting close to the end of my time, and I'm going to try to summarize or finish here very quickly. There's a concern about conserving the building values, and as a private property owner myself, I understand that concern. I wish that and would ask that the commissioners and the public keep an open mind of how, in fact, this conditional use, and I think your planning staff hit on this, might actually increase property values, especially for some of those properties that have not been developed. Because what we know, even with this conditional use permit, is essentially there's a use available. And if some of these parcels that we've identified, the 12 to 14, have already been developed or have homes on them or are of a residential nature and are not going to be converted with this conditional use, I think these property values might actually increase and have an increased value on adjacent lands. They're certainly not going to diminish property values miles away or within subsection C that are not adjacent to. There might be one adjacent landowner that in the application process with respect to the Weddles parcels, their concerns will be addressed by the restrictions that the applicant is proposing within the zoning district text itself and within the development regulations you already have in place to protect property values. I think coming to the end, I would like to just encourage you to, I guess, step back and look at the true nature of the limited outdoor recreational proposal that's being made in the context of all the other great outdoor recreational activities that occur, and not be concerned that this is, because there's no facts to establish it, it's just an assumption and a fear that this is somehow going to convert subsection C, all of it, into an amusement park or a highly lit resort or a venue that would detract from the value, the experience, and the natural look and feel of the Upper West Side zoning district. I think what it will do is complement it and be consistent with it and give those who enjoy it another opportunity in a different way to enjoy it in a carbon emissions-free manner. That is language in the text. Think about what that scale looks like practically in their outdoor experience. And give the Weddles and other property owners who qualify a chance to develop it in this way. Maybe show a new way to develop an outdoor recreation park that might be used by your local citizens and your tourists in a less intrusive way and in a way that fits more within the natural topography of the land and doesn't affect its neighbors. I think if you look at the findings of fact of your planning staff and you compare them to the conclusory conclusions of your planning board, that the meat of the matter and the facts and what would support, at least supporting a resolution of intent and allowing that public process to continue, would cause you to conclude that what the staff recommended at pages 12 through 14, that is incorporated into the planning board report as the recommendation for approval was originally issued to you, is very reasonable, acceptable to the Weddles, and I encourage you to endorse it in this process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Upper West Shore, do you want to do anything now, or do you want?
Sure,
Go ahead.
yeah, I'll talk. You want me to stay back here?
Wherever you'd like to be. We're-
Probably should come up where they can hear you on the microphone.
Okay.
Bill, did you want to go through your list first?
No, I'll wait until she gets done.
Okay, okay, I guess I'm just gonna stand here. So I just want to note some things for the record. I didn't need the full 15 minutes just because I don't feel just because I'm an attorney that I'm, entitled to 15 minutes. But I do want to note that I think that limiting public comment to 3 minutes when people have more to say after those 3 minutes violates the public right to participate, because we're supposed to have a reasonable time to participate. And given that that these guys just had 25 minutes, I think 3 minutes is a little bit unreasonable.
You were offered up to 15 minutes.
Yes, I was,
You
yeah.
would have been stopped at 15 minutes if you would have taken 15 minutes, so.
Okay, yeah,
Clarity.
just for the record, just noting that I think 3 minutes is unreasonable. So Waddell's attorney says that the planning staff's findings are conclusory, and the planning staff's findings in regard to the planning board's findings, and I don't disagree with that. I do think that the planning staff's, or not the planning staff's, the planning board's findings need to be, if you guys are going to deny the text amendment proposal, I do think that you should look at the findings that I just gave you and incorporate these findings, because the planning board's findings do not go deep enough and really thoroughly explain why the text amendment should be denied. So please, if you do want to deny, you can just look at the findings that I gave you. It's 5 pages of really thorough findings. I would also note that the criteria that was analyzed by the planning board and by the planning staff is not actually the correct criteria. The correct criteria is in 76.2.203, which is what I have analyzed here for you. What they have analyzed is called the low criteria, and that has been established in case law over decades, but it was modified in 2009 by 76.2.203. It's similar, but there are some slight differences. Another thing that they talked about, the applicant's attorney who did not introduce himself, so I can't say your name, but
Oh, I apologize.
no worries.
Shall I do that?
Give your name.
I thought I did. I'm sorry. I'm Andy Adamick.
Okay.
I'm an attorney in Helena with Brown and Tellsett. What is your name?
Lindsay Ramotka with Weinberg and Ramotka.
Okay.
So
Thank you,
what
Lindsay.
Andy discussed was the commercial use that is widespread in the Upper West Shore in the Upper West Shore zoning area. And the Supreme Court has specifically said that short-term rentals are not commercial uses. They are residential in nature. So, and that was actually really recently in September 2020. And the last thing, just to comment on their comments, is, the applicant just admitted that this zoning amendment does not benefit all of Subdistrict C. It's very limited to only 12 to 14 parcels. And when you have a zoning amendment that really only helps a few parcels at the expense of all of the surrounding landowners, that's clearly spot zoning. And I think if you guys do pass this, that it is a really great case for spot zoning, which I've noted in my written comments to you. Okay, so as you know, I represent the Upper West Shore Alliance. They are strongly opposed to this text amendment, as well as 99% of the people that live in Subdistrict C in the Upper West Shore area, and the people that have been on notice that this is in front of you today. As you know, probably the petition on change.org has over 34,000 signatures in opposition to this text amendment. That is unprecedented. It's enormous. The planning board hearing, 160 people attended. All the people there, except for one person, were opposed to the text amendment. The planning board itself, as Tiffany reviewed, unanimously recommended denial. And I think the reason for the opposition is pretty simple. This is wildly out of character for Subdistrict C. Subdistrict C is 100% residential. There are no services. It is completely in the WUI, which I don't think that they talked about fire services. It is rated Tier 1, which is the greatest protection need by Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. The portion of the highway that goes through Subdistrict C is extremely dangerous. It is curvy. The speed is 70 miles per hour. We all know people go significantly faster than 70 miles per hour. There are already numerous existing accesses. The traffic volume is high, and there are frequent wildlife vehicle collisions. The amendment text is really vague. Mountain ride. We have no idea what a mountain ride is because mountain rides are not defined. We can guess what mountain rides are because we know that the applicant works with a corporation called Weekend, I think I'm saying that right, who specializes in mountain rides and mountain coasters. What we don't know is how high can these mountain rides be? Can they be 30 feet high? Can they be 50 feet high? How high can they be? What is the visual impact of these mountain rides? How loud are they? How bright are the lights? Are they allowed to operate at night? Are they operating all 4 seasons? This is not just a summer tourist thing. We also have fall, winter, and spring. These are all questions that the public deserves to know now at this step in the process, because we're allowing mountain rides to be built anywhere in Subdistrict C, which is 4,400 acres if you approve this zoning amendment. If you guys do approve this, the public has no further recourse except for a challenge in court. There is no protest provision in the law. That was struck down years ago, and now it's codified in a new statute, which I noted for you in my comments. So there is no protest period. The public does not have that ability after you approve that today, or if you do approve that today. In 30 days, the amendment would become part of the zoning if you do approve today. And my clients and the overwhelming majority of your constituents will be stuck with adventure parks in their backyards. So I've given you all the findings of fact. It is clear that the findings support a denial. I urge you to really incorporate those findings, because if you do deny the text amendment, the applicant, obviously can challenge that as well as we can. And one thing you really need is thorough, accurate findings to withstand a challenge. So I urge you to incorporate our findings into yours if you do deny, which is the right thing to do here, given that virtually nobody in Subdistrict C or the Upper West Shore zoning supports this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go through the list of reasons not to permit this amendment. And like I said, we're trying hard to give everybody an opportunity to speak. If you agree with what's on this list, I think a minute to respond in that fashion is fine. If not, we've got 3 minutes. We've looked at what we believe is reasonable and not reasonable, and we've talked to a lot of different attorneys on it, and 3 minutes for this is a reasonable amount of time, we feel. It can be challenged later. So it's a 2-sided type list. It'll take just a minute here, but it will destroy the raw nature of the area. It will have negative effects on wildlife. The night lights will destroy the dark skies. This is God's land. Natural undeveloped land is more attractive and longer lasting. It will have a negative impact on the area overall. Hurt property values. It will increase traffic congestion and safety issues. It'll have increased traffic that will degrade the health and general welfare of the residents. It will negatively affect water quality. It will hurt the view from the lake. It will cause neighborhood disruption. People will feel the need to fence their property. Developments will open the floodgates to commercial development. Concentration of 200+ people per day. Not appropriate for a scenic highway. Have public safety concerns, response time for fire, ambulance, and law enforcement, increased taxes for funding and our limited services. Environmental impact on natural resources. opportunity to keep Flathead Lake a natural landscape for future generations. It's out of place for Subdistrict C. Against gem mining, no gravel pit. 200 cars is an average, many days may be higher. Other places for this type of project, there's a right to expect consistent neighborhood characteristics, school bus safety issues. Flathead is a precious treasure, 70-mile-per-hour speed zone. It's a dangerous road with no way to mitigate. Will cause additional litter and destructive behavior. Trespassing on collective properties to access the lake. It's all about self-enrichment for Waddell's. It's a Trojan horse that will lead to larger infringements. It will increase lakeshore access issues. It will negatively affect bald eagles nesting. There's no clear definitions of the use. It's no place for a 4,400-acre theme park. The flawed premise of nothing to do in the area from Polson to Columbia Falls Whitefish. There's golf, river rafting, movies, boating, fishing, ice fishing, cross-country skiing, trapping, horseback riding, bike riding, water slides, skateboarding, snowshoeing, mountain biking, walkways, concerts, street fairs, hiking, ATVs, and backpacking. Additional infrastructure will be needed, such as turn lights and turn lanes, or traffic lights and turn lanes. There'll be additional noise from people screaming, riding the roller coaster, and the noise from the roller coaster. Property rights person, but this should stay residential. Family-friendly residential area. It's negatively will affect wildlife habitat corridors and deaths. It's spot zoning. Amendment would endanger the rural nature of area. Commercial sprawl, inconsistent with the nature of West Shore zoning. Would have to deny new homes or cell service in the area for 911 calls. Commercial is more dangerous than residential. Lights for night rides. The amendment is the exact opposite of why I moved here. More burglaries. Bill signed doing away with the 40% protest. Amendment will open the door to additional commercial use. Mountainous and too steep. Environmental impacts negatively affect air quality. It doesn't fit the goals of the growth policy. Will create a financial burden to the county. There'll be additional sewage and water and use and stormwater issues. It's not an appropriate use for the land. Will clear cut the forest. Will remove natural habitat for wildlife. It'll benefit Flathead County and not Lake County. This belongs next to cities, not out in the woods. A bigger issue than just this amendment change. Creation of more dust, a dangerous precedent, wrong activity in the wrong place. Amendment violates a growth policy, settled here because of the zoning in place. Amendment erodes the spirit of zoning in effect, should not be allowed to use loophole to accomplish the goal. Neighborhood change of character, increased forest fire risk, and this needs more research. This is a summary of the comments we got in all the letters. Many of these comments were listed many times. This doesn't mean we agree or disagree with them. It's just what was in the letters we received. So as we go into the public comment, please, if your issue is on this list, keep it very short to a minute and identify that you agree with the list and you oppose the amendment. If you're not on this list, you'll have 3 minutes to comment.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
My name is Michelle Weinberg with Weinberg and Ramadka. Just so I'm clear, I mean, my clients, I want to advise my clients, since some are on Zoom and some are here, we're not getting a break, that they do not need to agree with all the comments.
No.
On a vote. I mean, some of these are, personal comments that of course my clients would not be in favor of. And I would also want to say, I advise my clients that under the right to participate and the county's own resolutions on public participation, that even if you have commented in writing, you may still give oral comment reiterating the points that you have made and elaborating on them, hopefully, here today, and I would encourage you to do so. Just quick, this is just an aside, under the open meeting laws, you do not need to give notice that you're going to record a public meeting. That's the plain language of the statute. Thank you.
You will have 1 minute to respond if you have made comments already. If you have anything additional to this list, you'll have up to 3 minutes. Yes, and please state your names as you give your comments. And with that, we will start with the proponents. Are there any proponents for the amendment? Are there any proponents for the amendment?
I'm the only one, I guess. Stand here.
Yes, your name, please.
My name's Rick Jor. I'm from Ronan. I'm only here because of reading the article in the paper, and I think it's important that we maybe analyze the rule book that we supposed to live by. It's called the Constitution, and it presupposes that the principle of property rights in the Montana Constitution, under Article 2, Section 3, the right of property is recognized as an inalienable right. My understanding of inalienable rights is they are not subject to a vote of the majority. They're inalienable. I see here, or I sense what I see, in my view, happening all too often in our state and in our nation. The majority getting their way over the inalienable rights of the individual. In my view, this nation was founded on the principle that individuals have rights and they are not subject to the whims of the mob or the majority. And I want to just reference quickly, I don't know these folks. I was not even aware of the proposal until I read the article, but I'm not inclined to be silent when I see property rights at stake here. And property rights should be primary rather than secondary over the desires or the conveniences of neighbors and majorities. James Madison wrote a wonderful essay, in my view, on the principle of property, and he said, this term in its particular application means that dominion which one man claims and exercises over the external things of the world, and in exclusion of every other individual. He also said, regarding the purpose of government, government is instituted to protect property of every sort, as well as that which lies in the various rights of individuals, as that which the term particularly expresses. This being the end of government, that alone is a just government, which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. I think we've lost really an understanding of the importance of property rights. And I may be out of time here, but I guess I would just conclude with this. I would agree with Mr. Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, that I would rather live in a country and suffer the consequences of too much liberty than in a society of too little liberty. John Adams said that unless property is secured, liberty cannot exist. I don't like the direction we're going. I encourage the commissioners to consider your oath. It's It's not to the statutes, it's not to whatever the or case law as it's mentioned.
Time's
We
up,
don't
Rick.
live in a judicial oligarchy, pardon me.
Time's up.
Okay. I'm for giving these folks their property rights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other proponents? Are there any other proponents for the amendment?
Is Mike Sierra on?
Last chance, are there any other proponents for the amendment? Okay, with that, we will move on to
Can we
the,
give him 1 second, because he's the actual business owner in
Is he-
sub-district D?
is he on here?
Mike,
Yes.
Yes, he's on the list.
I asked to unmute, I can't really do anything else from this end.
I can have him,
Well, he should be able to hear us. He's on. Mike, you need to unmute.
he's also super nice.
Hello.
We've all done
Hello.
that.
Can you hear me?
Mike, is that you?
Yes. Yes, it's the younger Michael Sarah.
You have, go ahead.
The only reason we're for it, obviously, business owners, the more business we get, we like that, but seeing how everyone else is so negative, it's kind of hard to almost throw ourselves under the bus. You know, I mean, we like to see more growth in the area, but not at the risk of everyone else that's so against it. When it's all our customers and local people, it's kind of hard to take sides.
So he's scared of backlash.
Pretty much.
Okay,
Especially as a business owner trying to expand in the community. Yeah. Do you want to say anything, Dad? Yeah,
So-
we're all for property rights and everyone being able to get and do what they want, seeing we've been going through the same issues, but I mean, we hope for the best for you guys, and the more expansion, you're not going to get more than 200 people coming down this road, I wouldn't think, but that's kind of the most I could really put in at this point. Thank you, guys.
thank you. Are there any other proponents? Okay, we will close the public comment from proponents, and we will move to opponents. Are there any opponents that have not given a written comment? Are there any opponents that have not given a written comment?
Hello. My name is Caitlin Carter. I am a Whitefish native, but I spent a lot of time in Lake County. I mean, I love it so much, and I love the land, and I have a really deep appreciation for it. And absolutely, like, yes, there needs to be development there, but I took one search at this company, and I know exactly that this is not what we stand for. I know that these sort of large roller coasters are not what, even considering just our global state needs at all. We need more public land access for kids to understand what Montana values are about and growing from the ecosystem. And so I am a strong proponent of this bill, and I don't think that anybody should really consider developing the land to such an extent.
Thank you. Are there any others who have not given written comment?
Sharon Wood.
Sharon did.
Hi, This is Michelle Lamando Patterson. My father-in-law does own property on Table Bay, quite a bit of it. And I'm commenting for him because he's 98 now and in Butte. I agree that we need more opportunities to show what is so special about Montana, which is the lake and the mountains and the scenery. And I vehemently oppose any change to the to the zoning requirements, and also any change to the natural landscape, the animals, the eagles, the mountain lions that we have on our property and around our property. I mean, these are the things that we need to promote, not that's the adventure that we need to promote, not zip lines and roller coasters. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Are there any others who have not given written comment?
Point of clarification, what is the, I have comments that I've submitted written, but I also have additional comments. Are you limiting me because I have submitted written comments to not presenting?
No, what I'm asking for right now is anybody who has not given written comment.
So you will not limit anyone else, is that correct?
Just, no. What I want to explain at this point is the commissioners have read every bit of the written comment that's been turned in. And so we've already heard what's going to be said today by most people. And you have a right to comment. If you want to reiterate it, that's fine. We've already heard it. And in the effort to let everybody be heard, but still try to keep the length of this meeting under control, that's what we're asking for, is just to not to stretch it out a lot longer if we don't need to. So with that, I will open it up to anybody with additional comment or people that have commented.
Yeah, I have, I don't think I've formally submitted written comments other than in my request for a link to this meeting. My name's Bob Bales. I'm a property owner on the Upper West Shore, and I oppose these amendments for most of the items that were on your list, and I support the existing zoning requirements.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is John Lecitino. I own property on East Bay. I am totally opposed to this proposal. If we continue to govern for the people the way we should and the way your oath is,
We have to have more rights than they do.
the people are against this. 30,000 signed the petition. Hundreds are online listening to this. We are vehemently against this. This is not the way of life for us as Montanans. When we feel our life is threatened and our world is going to be different, we get up, we rise up, we fight against it, and that's what we're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, commissioners, thanks very much for taking the time for this hearing. I have already contributed some written comments, and I trust that you will give them consideration. I do have an additional comment to make after reviewing some of the written comments last week that I saw. There were very few supporters of this zoning amendment, but they have suggested it will have economic benefits for the county and its citizens. I disagree, and I suggest you should question that conclusion. We should ask ourselves if commercial development always creates economic benefits, or does it depend on where it is? We have state laws, a new up-to-date growth policy, zoning regulations, a planning staff, and a planning board, because we all agree land use planning at some level is beneficial. It does make a difference what kind of development we have and where it is. In this case, we are considering allowing commercial development along a scenic stretch of highway directly across from some of the most valuable residential real estate in Lake County, and just a few miles north of a zone that already allows commercial development and has a large supply of undeveloped commercial property. Increasing the supply of commercial property in this area will likely decrease the value of existing commercial property based on the accepted theory of supply and demand. Subdistrict C begins a mile from the Rollins store. If a tourist attraction was next door to the store, it might bring more business. But I don't think this proposed business 3 miles away will bring much new business to the existing Rollins commercial area. Finally, I don't think there is any question that allowing commercial development along this section of highway will decrease the value of the residential properties across the Upper West Shore District. I also have to ask how successful a business can be with zero support from the local community. Allowing commercial development in Subdistrict C would be wrong for the residents and existing businesses in the Upper West Shore zoning district, wrong for Lake County, and maybe even create disappointment for any new business locating in Subdistrict C. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you give your name for the record?
Steve Rosso.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Kate McMahon. I live in 151 Wedgewood Lane in Whitefish, Montana. I am a professional land use planner and have been consulting on planning issues with counties and cities and citizens groups in Montana since 1997. I have a bachelor's degree in urban and regional planning, and I'm a certified planner with the American Institute of Certified Planning. I have been contracted by the Upper West Shore Alliance to review the proposed text amendment and submit concerns on their behalf. I have submitted those comments to the commission, but I would like to speak today because I don't think the summary fully includes all of the comments that I provided. This is especially regards to the finding of fact regarding conformity with the 2018 Lake County Growth Policy. The staff report and the planning board, along with the testimony of the applicant today, only referenced one policy from the Lake County Growth Policy regarding economic development. As noted in my written analysis, I identified 13 relevant goals and policies that have to do with land use, local services, natural resources, and other items. This is supported by the documentation and facts contained within my memo, and I would like the board to consider all of the relevant goals and policies to the planning board findings. I do commend the planning board for their thoughtful deliberations and the recommendations to deny this application, but I agree that those findings do need to have more facts to support them. In regards to planning, board findings of fact B and finding of fact G regarding transportation, the memo that I provided included specific documentation on roadway characteristics such as topography, curves, speed, geographic features, existing accesses, site distance, and wildlife conclusions. My analysis also is supported by the Montana Department of Transportation Roadwide Design Manual, traffic counts, and accident data. I request that these facts be added to the findings, to the record to support the finding of facts of the planning board. In regard to planning board finding of fact C, will the new zoning secure safety from fire and panic and disasters? The planning board did make a finding that there are lengthy response times and difficulties with volunteer services. My analysis includes further documentation and facts from the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, the Lake County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan, the Lake County Emergency Operations Plan that include documentation and facts to support these findings. These documents, already adopted by the Lake County Commission, indicate that Subdistrict C is located in the wildland-urban interface and has challenges with water supply and evacuation in the event of an emergency. Additionally, the increase in human activity associated with commercial use increases the risk of human-caused wildfires in the wildland-urban interface. I request that these documents, these specific documents, be referenced in the findings and that these facts be included to support the planning board recommendations. In regards to the planning board finding of facts H, will zoning give reasonable consideration to the character of district? The planning board finding noted that the district is residential My analysis includes the existing land use map from the Lake County Growth Policy to support this finding. Additionally, there's been extensive opposition to the proposal from residents in the district that have testified that an outdoor adventure recreation use is out of character. In regards to the applicants saying that there's already commercial uses permitted because short-term rentals are permitted in the district and in other districts, bed and breakfast, those are low density, low traffic generators. They're not comparable to a commercial recreation use that is a high traffic generator. So it's not comparable to compare those two. And I would ask that this information, especially the Lake County Growth Policy land use map, which shows this area as residential, be included in the findings to support the planning board's findings of fact. In regards to the planning board findings of fact, does the requested zone give reasonable consideration to the peculiar suitability of the district? The planning board noted that the area is heavily timbered and fairly steep. As noted in my report, I also include maps and documentation from Fish, Wildlife, and Parks regarding wildlife habitat. This, as I mentioned before, I've included a map that indicates that this area is wildland-urban interfaces. I've included documentation from 3 documents that have been adopted by the Lake County Commission regarding fire protection, water supplies, and evacuation. I request that all these facts be added to the findings of the planning board to support that this area is not suitable for any type of commercial development. For the convenience of the commissioners, my report does include specific language that you can amend to the planning board findings. I will remain on the call to answer questions, and thank you for considerations of my comments.
Thank you. As a professional, we have the ability to give them a little more time to speak. She's a professional on the subject. So, anyone else? Next? Yeah,
Hi. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Rich. My name's Rich Gutchen. I'm a resident of the area, full-time. First off, we are not the public, we're landowners, and we also have property rights. I find it's really odd that we have to argue against a zoning change rather than the people proposing the change having to make an argument for the change. And it may be that there was just an initial error in approving the zoning amendment. We've had other errors where we've had a house that was approved that violated the setback from the lake, and as homeowners in our ACC, we've had to address that issue. So it may just be an error that it was approved on accident. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Oh, that'd be great. My name is John Schneiders. I live in Table Bay. First, I want to thank Gail for responding to my email. I know you probably got lots of them, so thank you for taking the time to do that. I want to bring up a few new issues and comment on a few others. First, to the attorney, Andy, you propose that there's a lot of benefits of this project, which I don't see, but are these benefits only going to accrue if they happen in the residential neighborhood? Will these benefits actually take place, will they not take place in a commercial district? That's one question. I also ask you, like, what empirical evidence do you have saying that our property values are going to go up if this goes in? Everything I've seen states that property values are going to go down. You mentioned that the local residents seem to want this. As you can see, we're all here. We don't want this. There's associations forming, there's lawsuits, so people don't want this. A couple other questions. We live in Table Bay. It's 70-mile-per-hour speed limit going through there. If you're coming from a complete stop, we're gonna have cars gunning their engines all day long, going 0 to 60 to get back on the freeway. So all we're gonna hear is just all day long, just cars gunning their engines to get back on. So it's gonna be, terribly inconvenient. It's also gonna be loud. I would also say that people come to Montana for the natural beauty. So I don't think this is gonna actually increase tourism. It's gonna actually hurt tourism. They come because it's the last great place. It's where you can actually see this open territory. Some areas, some things I didn't hear on your list. There's a state park a mile away from this from this amusement park they want to build. What's going to happen when all these people walk on the highway to walk to the state park? Is there, are they going to cross the freeway at night? Is there any sidewalks? And there are going to be a stream of people from the state park going to visit this. It can't handle it. What's going to happen on, one gentleman mentioned, 4th of July, we could have 400 cars there. Are they going to park in Table Bay? Who's going to pick up the trash? Where's this going to go? And I also want to mention the gentleman who spoke here about the Constitution. I mean, I love the Constitution. That's why I love this place. People are sticking up for the Constitution, and they don't even know what we're talking about. But I like the fact that he's talking about it. But I just want to mention, these people purchased property in a residential neighborhood, and they didn't put a contingency on the sale. They said, hey, we agree, we're buying property in a residential neighborhood. And so if you give up your rights to say, I'm buying in a residential neighborhood, and now you say, no, I want to change it, I think that actually infringes on everyone else's property rights. I can't go buy property next to the Conrad Museum in Kalispell and put a factory and say it's my, my rights, right? So I just want to bring that attention. But anyway, I appreciate you guys listening to this, and thank you for the time.
Thank you.
If I may. Yes, good afternoon, commissioners and neighbors. My name is Julius Barcy. Regarding the thoughts offered by the two gentlemen whom first spoke, I am in full agreement with their view on property rights. That being said, zoning laws do exist. Until then, property owners, as was just said, must abide despite our personal convictions. Also, as previously noted, I believe the burden of justification has been placed on the wrong shoulders. Zoning rules vary greatly by region, but their chief purpose is to separate residential property use from commercial property use. This legal line should never be shifted without the most compelling of reasons, all of which should reflect the values of the community. And basically, I believe I am together with most of my neighbors on these comments. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, I'm Carly Dixon. I live on Goose Bay Road. I've had property there since 1997, and there's never been one day when I've been bored. You all are at a crossroads, a fork in the road. You've been entrusted a jewel, a diamond. And depending on what you decide, you will either preserve this beautiful diamond, or you open the barn door and it will change into rhinestones. So your decision is going to have an impact for years to come. And I beg you to preserve the diamond. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Sandy Schneiders. I'm a resident and owner in Table Bay. I've already submitted written comments, which I'm sure the commissioners have already seen, but I did have one other additional point as to why I'm opposed. The lawyer, I believe his name is Andy, he had said that doing this for the children, which I'm a former school teacher, I love children, but it should not matter whether or not this proposal is 2 to 4 minutes away from where it is, where they would like it to be now, in an area that's already appropriately zoned for this sort of thing. If you're talking about the tourists that are coming from the state park, from the church camps that are down the road, they should not be walking or have this within walking distance on a 70-mile-an-hour road. It shouldn't, they should be bused here anyway. So it doesn't make a difference if this actually happens in Subdistrict D. And if they had applied to do this in Subdistrict D, I would be for it, but they're not. They're trying to change what they bought knowing it was a residential area and change the zoning based on them. I would also like to say, in accordance with the Constitution begins with we the people, not I the person. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello?
I've got a young lady here in the audience first.
Hi.
Okay.
My name is Christina Schroeder. I do live in Subdistrict C, and you guys got my comments, so I don't want to go too far into that, but just to piggyback off some of the things said today, I try not to bring this up too much because I try to speak very carefully when I speak of my children. I have 5 kiddos. The oldest is 12. I have triplets who are 10, and I have an 8-year-old. My triplets have cerebral palsy. They are wheelchair bound. I already have.
My audio's live.
All of our volunteer services. But I also have the other side of it where I know that I may need emergency services for my family. If there's a fire, my 10-year-olds are almost as tall as I am now. 2 of them are completely wheelchair bound. We'll have to carry them out. These are concerns that I have. It has nothing to do with an individual property or an individual, business wanting to come in. It is, what is the potential risk looking at doing this for all of Subdistrict C? And I did put this in notes, but I want to make sure it was, I guess, seen by everybody or read by everybody. Just 2 weeks ago, the end of April, leaving my house, I come out and here on Highway 93, directly across from West Shore State Park, there is what appeared to be an accident. The short story is a gentleman's car caught on fire. I don't know if the first 911 call went in. The first 2 responders that helped him put the fire out left. He could not call 911. His phone wasn't routing correctly. Another lady stopped. She called 911. It took 20 minutes for them to call her back. They spoke to the gentleman, had him self-assess, and they said, fire and EMTs are too busy. He self-assessed his own condition and whether or not this fire was going to reignite and chose not to send anybody except for a police officer. And the patrolman was actually Highway Patrol that came from Flathead County. It took 45 minutes for him to get there while her and I waited. His shoes were melted on tops and bottoms, his hands covered. He had legal documents. His dad had just passed and he had legal documents in his car. So he had to pop a trunk while his taillight and back end of his car was on fire. I know, maybe as a mom who's dealt with a lot of these things, he could have had any sort of medical emergency happen. And already, end of April, our services, our emergency responders are too busy to respond to every call. And I think that's, to me, the most important thing. We don't need to encourage more people when we don't have people there to already deal with any new emergencies or highway issues that may happen. And I'm also on the Upper West Shore Alliance, and I just want to say we understand growth will happen. We're not trying to stop growth. We want to make sure it is appropriate for the area. And this is a completely residential area. That's why I moved here. It was residential. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience here that would like? Yes, ma'am.
What I wrote isn't on your list.
That's good.
My name is Stephanie. I'm the president of the Wild Horse Ranch Homeowners Association, and I'm also a member of the West Shore Alliance. And we are adamantly opposed to this amendment to commercial for any limited reason now, in the future, ever. And I agree with with Kathleen McMahon had to say, and all the 175 comments. Last night, while I was thinking about what I was going to say to save the Upper West Shore, I found myself amazed that I even had to come up with something, because I could not understand why anyone would want to destroy the most beautiful place in the world. So not coming up with an answer, I will say, we were one of the first people to receive the letter from the Weddells, is that the correct pronunciation? Weddells, that dear valued neighbors, we stating there wasn't enough family-friendly activities in the area. They were going to solve it by putting in gem mining, snow tubing, and horseback riding. The actual amendment has a lot more than that. So we contacted the county planning board, actually Ms. Murphy here, and we were told that we could stop this by getting 40% of the people in Subdistrict C to oppose it. So my husband and I got on the cadastral system. We created a spreadsheet of all the addresses and sent information to all the people, including a ballot for or against. Well, with our goal being, once we got to that 40%, we would contact the Weddells, which we did. I would like to state, as of Sunday, May 16th, 100% of the ballots that we have received from the Subdistrict C people are opposed, and this amounts to 78.1% of the people in Subdistrict C. And I know somebody said, you've heard from all over the country, people who treasure this national treasure that is Flathead Lake. But let me emphasize, the people I'm talking about live in Subdistrict C, the 78.1%. As for the applicants themselves, this has nothing to do with them personally. This is about our home, which we love. And there was an article that I read that the applicant spends a fair share of his time on the road, but he always loves to return to the Bitterroot Valley. He said, and I quote, "Work is hectic, so it's nice to come home to the peace of the mountains here. But Rollins is my full-time home, and I love coming home to the peace and the quiet and the essence that is Rollins." Then I thought, if we were really truly valued neighbors and they feel about their home in Stevensville like we feel about our home in Rollins, maybe at this point, I'm hoping they would pull their application and personally kill the zoning amendment so everyone can go back to the peace and quiet of their homes. But if not, there is overwhelming opposition based on concrete reasons. Listen to Kate, and but I won't list them. But at midnight, the answer came to me. Why is this happening? And the only drive more compelling than love and nature is money. And that's heartbreaking to me. Thus, I respectfully ask, and I'm almost going to beg you guys, that to not let this happen and to save the Upper West Shore and deny this amendment too.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience here?
Yay, 70.
I saw that blog.
I live in Schultz Bay Estates, owned home there since 1998, for full-time residents. Quite a number of things I had thought I'd come into here with, and you heard most of them. I'm a strong proponent of zoning. When people start to live in close proximity to one another, you have to have some rules. A family knows that from the get-go. And I look back to the history of the zoning in this district. It started in the early 90s, as Hallsteiner pointed out, and the vision of it. When we looked for 3 years before we found a place, and I talked to zoning. Is there going to be a major highway here? What's going to happen here? And we fell in love with the area. We camped at the campground, and it was a done deal after there for about 3 years. So there's two things about zoning that I want to point out, and property rights. There are property rights, not the traditional dig the dirt, move the cars, or this sort of thing that you think of. So I do what I want with my property. I have a property right to enjoy my property. And that means I want to make sure, and zoning does this, that I can move to an area where there'll be some untoward imposition, pig farm, dirt track, or whatever that's proposed and put in there. So my enjoyment is very important. Secondly, my property value is a property right in a sense. About a quarter to a third of my net worth is tied up in my home. And I want to see that preserved. I don't believe that I would be affected, but I know the people right next there would be affected. And then I want to quickly end up with one thing, if I may. The highway department has its metrics for assessing the feasibility of ingress and egress into this type of establishment. I want to just talk a little bit about the personal side. Coming into Lakeside yesterday, or out of Lakeside yesterday, I was passed by somebody on a double yellow line. I've lived here long enough to see the traffic increase on the highway and the kind of aggression and impatience increasing. People get behind a truck or a camper, and we have a passing lane at the beginning of this proposed project and one at the end of this project. I see them start jockeying, pulling up tighter behind people, and then whipping out right away to get around. I've seen evidence of accidents on the left turn lane that was recently installed to go into, I believe, Table Bay. Apparently somebody watched somebody pull out, thought, oh, they're going to the turning lane, and no, it wasn't, rear-ended. I want to add in quickly that frustration that I see, the high speeds. When it was 65, people did 70. It's 70 now, they do 75. I'm going to add into this the amount of intoxicated drivers that are on the road. And I also think if I'm a kid and I'm going to an amusement park, what better thing to go buzzed and high and really get joy out of this. I mean, it's just a negative thing of running a business like that. You haven't added in ice and snow and the fact that that section of the highway is designated as one of the highest deer impact areas in the state of Montana. I am actually afraid when my wife goes to town, and when I have company come here, I tell them, watch the edges of the road. Don't watch the middle. It's going to be the deer here, the deer here. You can't look at the views. people driving this road at this high speed, and there's all sorts of visual distractions. It's very difficult. These things are not in the metric that the highway really is looking at, these emotional things that we all see from day-to-day driving in town. I want to finish with one thing. I've been saying Flathead Lake is the first best place in the last best place. Again, Flathead Lake is the first best place in the last best place. And the zoning on our area has helped preserve that. You can be in the lake and you'll see nothing but mountains and beauty all around. You'll see no scars from commercial development of most of. The only place I can think of is in Summers. There's a gravel pit there. I wish these people well. I really like the idea and I like the looks of some of those rides, but I think it's definitely in the wrong place.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience here? I was going to finish up in our audience right here first. Go ahead.
Do I have to stand?
No, you don't have to. You don't.
My name is Kathy. And first what Andy said, he said 17 acres for 200 cars. He made it sound like that's a lot of space. We have 10 acres, a quarter mile away from where they want to put this amusement park. I want to be able to hit 30 cars there comfortably. So that was crazy what he said about that. He said only 14 parcels would be affected in that 4,000 acres. No, all 4,000 acres would be affected, not just 14 parcels. He tried to compare this amusement park with VRBO. That's crazy. I totally disagree with 90% of what he said. And I want to make sure, once again, that it's on the record that we have all said how dangerous Highway 93 is, because people are going to be killed because of this. And you will have recourse to see that everyone in this community is terrified about the death of people on that road, because it is on the record now. I disagree with everything about this proposal. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Yes.
I'll choose to sit down also. John Sarvis, her husband. And we've submitted letters and everything, so I won't reiterate any of that. And I don't necessarily disagree with the guy who was talking about the Constitution and property rights, but all of us have property rights too, just like what the individual over here said. And so that needs to be taken into account as well. And I'll end with the last thing. When we were looking for a place to move and everything, we did in retires, we discovered this area. And I'm talking to my wife about it and everything. And my wife says, this place feeds my soul. And that's her statement. This place feeds my soul. Okay. And I'm going to add a corollary to that. An amusement park does not feed my soul.
Thank you. Sir.
Yes, I'm James Wheeler and I live there off of Cable Bay. I've been coming to Montana for the last 49 years. I didn't come here to ride a zip line. I don't come here to ride a roller coaster. I can go to California and go to Six Flags Magic Mountain, or I can go to Disneyland and do everything. I came here to enjoy the nature that we have, to see the eagle flying, the osprey, the ducks, the geese, the doe with her fawn. They're going to destroy all of this by putting in an amusement park. People don't come to Montana for an amusement park. People have to realize that. They don't come up here. They go to California. They go to Texas. They go to Washington. They go to New York. Not here in Montana. They come here to fish. They come here to hunt. They come here to enjoy the relaxation and the peace and quiet that we have. By putting in an amusement park, you don't know the noise pollution that is created by an amusement park with all the things running. Having a roller coaster and kids screaming on it. Having a zip line. going through the woods, scaring everything that is available there. It's unbelievable that we would even consider something like this in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else in the room that wants to comment? Okay, we'll go back to the people in our video audience. And is there anybody that would like to comment? Yes.
Is that me? Yes, I think it is. All right. My name is Ingrid. My husband and I have 4 parcels, technically in sub-district A, apparently, but directly across the highway. One is a home in Table Bay, right across from the Wheels property, which would be, of course, heavily impacted by the sound of the cars accelerating to reach 70 miles an hour in short order. The others are in Goose Bay, just south of the state park, which is also a very nice place for people to entertain themselves, but also across from Subdistrict C, which would become commercially zoned and would very much change the character of that as time went on. The man from Ronan, Mr. Gior, Rick Gior, I think his name was, saying about the inalienable property rights, that's been addressed, but if you say that you can do anything with your property, then there really is no point in having a county commission. The purpose of it is to preserve the quality of life for all of us here. And I think you've heard from hundreds of people already as to what the quality of life is that they desire. But there really would be otherwise no justification to have zoning if anyone could do anything with their property. The Weedles did buy the land with full knowledge of the existing zoning, and to come in here, buy it somewhat recently, and then expect to change it afterwards is unreasonable. And as far as the property values, if they say they would bring in additional money to the county, I would submit that as a neighboring owner, I would certainly be asking the county to reassess my property at a lower rate, because I would find that it would be undesirable to have people entering the freeway right there by our entrance to Table Bay, and much more traffic, noise, screaming and yelling, also decreased response times, possibly litter. So that would, and I'm sure I would not be the only person who would be asking for that of the county assessor. And zoning is to provide a coherent plan, to have some kind of community and continuity of character within that community. We count on that when we buy land, you check into that. And so to change it on people after all these people have owned land for many, many years is beyond belief that it would even be considered. I think this is the last best place, truly, as people have said, and to change it up would just be making it more of the same. Every area does not have to provide something for everyone. This is an area that is meant for the outdoorsmen and nature lovers and people who want to enjoy some peace in the world. And if you want busy, exciting things, as the other gentleman said, you go somewhere else and find that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just for a point on the record, the county does not assess properties. The Department of Revenue assesses properties.
The county merely collects your taxes.
Well, I believe that the county probably in some way benefits from those taxes, I would hope.
Not always.
Okay, next. Charles.
Hello, my name is Charles Kane. Unlike the applicants and the 2 objectors, my wife and I actually own a residence in Subdistrict C. We object to changes to zoning regulations which will affect our property being made against our wishes and against the wishes of our neighbors. I object to a little bit of commercialization in a residential area because it sets a precedent for a little bit more commercialization when someone from Billings has a business idea that doesn't fit the character of the existing zoning and wants a little bit more of a change. I object to the remarks by applicants' counsel about how this change would be good for the community when the applicants have no documented connection to the area prior to their purchase of residential property only a year ago. If this is so good, why don't they build it near their home in Ravalli County in the Bitterroot Valley and leave us alone? The applicant's advisor seems confused about planning procedures. He repeatedly referred to facts that the planning staff included in their original report as facts, and facts brought to light during the public comment phase as something else. Yes, the planning board revised the findings of fact document. They did it to reflect the additional facts learned from the public. Isn't that the purpose of public comment? The applicant's advisor seems to think that the public and the planning board should be excluded from the process. If the staff doesn't object, then we're done. I disagree. The applicant's advisor made a remark demonstrating ignorance of the area when he spoke about people in the area who do not have access to the lake. True, not everyone has lake shore, but everybody has access to the lake because there are state parks and other public lands ringing the lake, as well as private businesses in other areas away from Rollins that front on the lake. Also, we object to spot zoning on principle. Spot zoning contradicts the purpose of the whole idea of zoning. I'm aware that the proposal pretends to cover the entirety of Subdistrict C. However, 93 through this area is full of hills that drivers can't see over and is full of rock outcroppings with resultant blind curves. The applicant's property may be the only property in Subdistrict C that can meet Montana Department of Transportation sightline requirements for a commercial entrance. Therefore, this change will only appear to benefit one property owner. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Sharon Wood and my family owns property on Subdistrict A. I already sent in my comments in a letter, but I'd like to restate my continuing opposition to this proposal. In addition to those comments, I'd like to ask the question as to how the interests of one recent property owner can supersede the interests of so many others. It's just a general question, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Jim Hollensteiner. I and our family have owned property in Rollins for over 60 years. We've been a longtime resident of the Flathead Valley, including over 100 years in Painted Rocks Bay. I was interested in the list of reasons that you read off as to why people are opposed. Those are all good and valid reasons. I would like to focus on the flip side of that. And the issue is, why do people want to live in Rollins? I have been personally and actively involved in all of the zoning initiatives going back over 50 years. I started in 1970 when we did a zoning change along Rollins Lakeshore Drive. Importantly, in the early 90s, I was appointed as one of 5 people by the county commissioners to take a look at the possibility of developing zoning. I was very actively involved in that. I functioned as a secretary and the person who wrote most of the letters and reports to the commissioners, to the community, to the planning board and others. If you take the flip side of all the reasons why people are opposed, why do people want to live in Rollins? And the big answer that comes back, I like the living in a quiet area, rural. Like, I like the culture. I like the character of it. I like it this way. The other flip side is people were adamantly opposed to any expansion of commercial activity, and that's why there is a number of prohibitions on commercial and limitations also on commercial. I had a hand in writing the lead paragraph on the zoning regulations. The purpose of the zoning regulations, and I quote, is to maintain the rural character of the area. That's what we're talking about. That's what the people want. And hopefully that will be the result of the deliberations today. So carry on. We love Rollins. We want to keep it pretty much the way it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maria? Maria Eberl?
Yes, I'm sorry. I am a landowner in sub-district C, and my husband and I strongly object to this rezoning of a small parcel of land, or just being petitioned by the owners of a very small parcel of land for such a large parcel that's going to be rezoned. But I'd also like to say that, remind you of your mission statement of the planning department. Lake County Planning Department works to provide quality service to the public while encouraging responsible development, growth, and land uses throughout the county. The Planning Department strives to 1, promote public health and safety, 2, prevent activities that adversely impact the quality of life, and 3, encourage activities that preserve and protect the natural environment, water quality, wildlife habitat, and economic and agricultural opportunities for future generations. I think that this rezoning does not satisfy any of those parts of the mission statement, and I adamantly oppose the redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Fisher? Bill Fisher?
Yes. Yep, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a landowner in Subdistrict C, and so are other members of my family. And I'm a third-generation local. And other than my written comments, the one or two that I wanted to address is, well, our property is actually adjacent to the property of the Weddles, the individuals proposing the zoning change. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned is that the attorney mentioned something about 260 acres at all that would be potentially affected, but that doesn't include the state sections that border the Highway 93, which according to the legislature's direction to the DNRC, which manages state trust lands, they're to be managed for income to the schools. And so that would also open those state sections to this type of commercial activity. And the thing to me that goes along with that, and was briefly mentioned early on by someone, is there's a lot of language in the proposal with no definitions. And in today's culture, unfortunately, you get a hold of a good attorney and you can wordsmith something to make it mean just about whatever you want to make it mean. So I think it's severely lacking in definitions and doesn't adequately express the potential impacts and ramifications for that subdistrict C. I think it has, I believe very strongly it has the potential for way more commercial development than what the Weddles have indicated would be possible with their proposal. And my last point is, that hasn't really been addressed, is the whole trespassing issue with the proximity of this proposal to residences, including ours, which is right adjacent to the Weddles. Just having been around where high activities are, I can pretty much guarantee without any doubt in my mind that ourselves and other adjacent property owners and those across the highway on the lakeshore will be dealing with trespassing issues that we've not had to deal with in the past. So those are my comments along with my written ones. Thank you.
Schroeder?
Hi, yeah, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Corey Schroeder. I also have a couple properties in Subdistrict C. And I wrote a short comment, so I won't necessarily reiterate that other than to say, you know, the will of the people here in the area is pretty obvious at this point. And I think it's safe to say that, I mean, I don't know which positions get voted for, but this community votes for the people that eventually it leads down to the board here. And we will remember that, you know, we want our will represented as a whole. I think that's fair and safe to say. And though I hate getting the political arena, I will absolutely care after this if that were to change what I purchased into something commercial. I just really don't want that. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
And for the record, I will say right now that when I make decisions on things, I do what I believe is best for the people I represent. And if I get voted out of office for that or voted in office, that's the way it works. But I always have this country's interests at heart.
That's perfect, man. Thank you.
Lisa Brown? Lisa Brown?
Hello, I'm a property owner. We own property right across the road, 11 acres on the lake that's been in my family for 8 decades. My concern here is that we also look at what is actually at issue before you today, and that's a text amendment. I think when adopting a zoning regulation, including a text amendment, the law requires that the county zoning regulations be made in accordance with and in substantial compliance with the growth policy. You commissioners drafted the growth policy, and I think that growth policy is completely consistent with the testimony that you've been hearing from all of your constituents today. When you're reviewing the specific goals of the Lake County growth policy, I think it's readily apparent that the proposed text amendment should not be adopted, as it is not in substantial compliance with the county's growth policy, and there is no place within the subdistrict C that such a text amendment allowing for commercial development could be implemented without violating the statutory requirements. You did a brilliant job, I think, drafting the Lake County's growth policy, and I believe that's what everybody's asking you to comply with, because what you stated as the purposes of that growth policy is what we all value in our lives and in the livability of our residential community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I don't see any more hands from where I'm sitting.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes.
My name is Howard Butler. I thank the commissioners for reading actually just about all of my comments that I made in writing, but I just want to make one very brief statement. I do live directly across 93 from the property under consideration. I've lived there since 2002, just retired, and I'm planning on making Montana my permanent residence in July. I just want to go on the record and just say that I was born and bred in Brooklyn and then moved to Southeast Florida. I have absolutely no desire to go back to either, and for sure have no desire to bring what I left out to Montana. As a result of my background, I can't begin to tell you how many people like the Waddells and their attorney have told me how much better off I am going to be because of them making money. I just can tell everybody that never happens. And when the dust settles, their Trojan horse becomes an outright assault on the rest of us as we get slaughtered. I'm totally opposed to this, as the residents understand what this is all about, and it is not to benefit us. It's to benefit a select group of people, and it has absolutely no intention of benefiting those of us in the area or those who are coming out to Montana to enjoy what I personally have found so amazing about what I call my Montana. I thank you. I thank the commissioners for all your work and dedication. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name's Lee Dixon. I haven't figured out how to raise my hand. It's my technical inexpertise. So if you would permit an older, non-technical man to make a couple comments, I'd like to do that. I did submit a list of a response in objection to the proposal by the applicant, identifying the 18 items, and the questions that really are that's the criteria that the state established under that statute 76-203 that are to be taken into consideration when determining whether or not to grant a change in zoning. And my conclusion on all 18 items was that they weren't satisfied. So I reiterate that. But what I'd like to do, if I may, just take a moment to, because what I didn't hear and didn't have an opportunity to comment on was the counsel for the applicant's comments today. First of all, I'd like to say his comment about conclusory findings by the planning board seems to me the process provided that. I mean, the staff presented their findings, they did their study and presented them. The planning board responded that evening after hearing public comments. So there was no, so, you know, in essence, there was really nothing else but conclusion. They considered it. They made their conclusions based on what they had heard and what their opinion was with regard to the question. And so there was no, you know, great elaboration. And I don't think that should be that in any way should adversely impact what the planning board did pass. The comment by the council for the applicants that there's some kind of bias that the planning board's conclusion represented or some kind of bias. Well, that bias was 169 people on the call for that meeting. Those people are the residents of the Upper West Shore zoning district. I don't think that the voice of the people of the county who are directly impacted and are voters of the county constitutes bias. I think that's an erroneous a statement, and I really object to that. The other thing, that the comment that noise, dust, and lake pollution, where he disagreed with both the board and the staff, the planning board and the staff, he said, you know, we've got to consider that's a conclusion based on assumptions and well, that may be true when someone hears what they're considering a recreational park, but the applicant itself said they proposed that there would be 280 visitors a day. Well, I don't see that it's possible that you have 280 visitors a day. And that's a number, arbitrary number. It could be 500. It could be 100. I don't know. But there's no doubt that cars, trucks, buses, motorcycles are not carbon emission free vehicles, and that is what is going to be. That's the only way to get to the property. So I think that it's frankly, it just goes against common sense to say that there won't be any noise, dust, or lake pollution. And I just have a couple more comments, and that is, his comment toward the end, and maybe it was his conclusionary, was that he wanted this proposal would give the board an opportunity to show that an amusement park could be developed different than the way it's been in the past. So he wants Lake County to act as a guinea pig so that we can experience this new type of development. But it seems to me this is virtually an admission that such activities are inappropriate and contrary to the environment, but also contrary to the residential area that exists. To me, saying that we're going to do it differently is a, as I say, is a mission against interest in that regard. Property values, I don't know anyone who lives near a congested area with amusement facilities will say that their property values were increased as a result of that. People don't come, as the others have said, to Montana to recreate in a way that they could do at home or down the road or at Big Mountain or at elsewhere that already exists. And the thought that this amusement park is going to disperse the public visitors on the lake is ludicrous. I mean, people they go to the lake because they want to enjoy the water. They're going there for water sports. They're not going to say, gee, it's really busy here today. I think I'll go up to the amusement park with their boat in tow. So it's just beyond, it just stretches credibility with regard to this proposal. as we know, the duty of the commissioners, and I say this with all due respect, is to protect and serve the people of the county, and to protect the land in terms of zoning, to protect the land from inappropriate and harmful uses. And that can only be done by denying this application. So I respectfully request that the commissioners of Lake County appropriately deny the application today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bridget?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can I get your last name, please?
Yes, Bridget Morse. Thank you. I'm a landowner in the Upper West Side, and I'm just around the corner from the lady who spoke earlier, Michelle. And I really want to just make a few comments. I already sent in a letter for you guys to read, but in thinking about the limited use of the commercial and the way it's worded, and the word that Lindsay used of spot zoning, and that really sort of struck a chord with me. It seems that they are spot zoning one little section, but it's affecting 4,000 acres is what they're asking for. And so that entire area then has this new caveat put on top of it where it could all become something like that. Sorry about that. And that's not a good thing for this section of the lake. And the fact that they've limited it to such a limited kind of commercial use, if you want commercial use in this area, it should be commercial use. It shouldn't be limited to a specifically few named items. And obviously that's not what I want or anyone else. We don't want commercial use in this zone. So I do think we should deny this, and I hope you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Hello, I'm Holly Larson. Am I on?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. I am adamantly opposed to the zone change. I have sent you 3 different letters, I believe, and I printed out the petition that Tessa drew up like about 20 days ago and sent a cover letter to you saying that the keys to our future are in your hands. You can unlock the treasure chest, or you can, oh, hello? Anyway, what I want to, and it's so amazing, I've been working with these incredible women involved, a handful, and one of them put the 4,000 acres on a Google map, Earth map, and I have it here. I printed it out. Now the lighting is terrible, but I like to make you all, anybody see that? The darkness is Flathead Lake. Up here is Summers. And then we have Finley Point, and this yellow hazed in area is the 4,000 acres. This is a huge zone change application. And when I saw that, it literally slapped me in the face. I have listed the reasons which everybody has mirrored in their comments today, but what hit me so drastically yesterday was how on earth are we going to supply, as Christina Schroeder said about the fire on the car just off of where I'm from, Goose Bay, how are we going to provide safety for the amusement park, excuse me, Alpine Amusement Park, which, by the way, nobody has mentioned. We have one an hour away at Big Mountain or Whitefish Mountain with the Alpine slides. It's probably the equipment that they're selling represented in the zone change. But anyway, we have to have a fire department. How can we rely on these fantastic volunteers? I mean, I did a quick tally this morning. There's 16 in the Rollins area that are firefighters, if they can get off work and come in with a call. And yes, they can call out to other volunteer departments. Had a great talk with the gentleman down in Polson, and he has 32 volunteers. but that represents around the Polson area as well as up the shoreline. I mean, we could be in a big world hurt, and how are we gonna pay for this? As well as we need police. Lakeside doesn't have a police force, and that's the closest town to this development, 5 miles or 6 miles south or north of there. How are we going to pay for this? Well, our taxes are going to probably be the course. And I don't know about the rest of the world. As one gal said, I'm sure our taxes are going to go down, but yeah, that won't be happening because that's the tax base that normally pays for all the services. And what other points did I have? I just sort of, I guess the map in the size of 4,000 acres in regards to Flathead Lake, which looks ginormous to everybody. This is a huge, huge zone application change. And it was news to me that the 17 acres that started the ball rolling is now possibly up to, was it 255 acres? That their attorney made note of, and I guess maybe I missed that in stuff that I've been reading, but that's big too. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Holly Larson. I live at Goose Bay, and I'm adamantly opposed to the zone change. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Yes, I would like.
Hi, this is, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. This is Shannon Olant. My great grandmother purchased property on Rollins Lake Shore Drive in 1966. So it's been in the family for 4 generations. And I am adamantly opposed to this zoning change. Not only, a lot of these points have been mentioned already, but I just feel like it's my duty to my family to voice our opposition to it. This is a Trojan horse of a change, and there typically, before making a drastic change like this, there's a need that has been identified. And in this particular case, you know, there's a saying that comes to mind: if you're bored, you're a boring person. And the reasoning given by the Wedells for the zoning change and the subsequent amusement park that they plan to build, I mean, if you're bored in a place like this, the problem may lie with the individual. So I'd like to suggest that there's no defensible reason to change the landscape to those who lack imagination. Part of what makes this place magic is that it fosters imagination. And it does that through unadulterated natural beauty. So to pass this proposed change would be doing a disservice not only to the current residents, but to future generations of these residents. You know, we are people who love and appreciate and treasure and value this land. It's not to be exploited in any kind of a money-making endeavor. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Next.
Mary Arnott here requesting to speak. You can't see my hand up because I am not on video. Mary Arnott requesting to speak.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, compliments to the group today for your professionalism, and especially to the commissioners who have done an outstanding job by arranging for this opportunity and for listening to your constituents. I do have a couple of additional comments in addition to the letters that we have sent, my husband and I. We are both residents within the zoning district, and so our points I'm sure will be heeded. 3 things that I will take issue with, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounce. I'm calling him Lawyer Andy because I did not get an introduction, so my apologies to Lawyer Andy. These are the assumptions that I do not agree with. First of all, any cogent decision I'm sure the commissioners will make will be data-driven with actual facts, not supposition, not opinions, not emotions. That being said, I object and I do not agree with the supposition by the applicants that our properties will increase in value. I do not agree to that. I don't see any data-driven statistics to prove that point. I also disagree that the children, and I believe this is a direct quote, although it might be a paraphrase, that the residents and children have very little to do in this area. I disagree with that assumption. That is not true. We have a great deal to do. As someone already mentioned, West Shore State Park is a jewel, an enormous opportunity for people to come quietly, safely, and enjoy the environment. The most ridiculous assumption assessed by the attorney is that any amusement park entity would decrease the overcrowding of other areas of entertainment is quite honestly rather silly and sort of insulting. And one additional point, the attorney mentioned that there are other commercial activities within this district, namely verbos, short-term rentals, et cetera, et cetera. Those entities have never requested a zoning change. They did not require a zoning change. So to make that assumption is quite ludicrous and also a little bit kind of insulting to those of us here today. So to sum up my comments, please, for the record, note that my husband and I in this district are adamantly opposed to any zoning, remodel, redistricting. The zoning should be not allowed. The rezoning should be not allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yes, I would like to speak. Excuse me. My name is Mary. It's spelled M-A-Y-R-E, Flowers. And I'm speaking today on behalf of Citizens for a Better Flathead. Since 1992, we have been working with residents throughout Flathead and also in Lake County to help them access public processes like this and to be able to understand how to comment and raise issues of concern as to how growth occurs in their neighborhood. So we are here today strongly in support of the West Shore Neighborhood Alliance. I would also like to reiterate that I've reviewed the findings that were handed out to you today by the West Shore Alliance attorney and feel that those are very important for you to give careful consideration to. I would also reference that those findings should be hand in hand with the report that you received from Kate McMahon, the professional planner, who also provided many of the factual basis for the findings that the attorney has provided you. Additionally, I would like to point out that another important finding of fact should address the need for this type of development. And in the comments that we've already submitted to you, we submitted links to the Montana Tourism Charter and to documents that reference the tourism priorities within our state. And I just want to read you the first principle within this charter is, whereas the travel and recreation industry of Montana recognizes our greatest asset in today's market is Montana's great outdoors and pristine environment, including the headwaters of the continent, scenic vistas, wide open spaces, and abundant charismatic wildlife. And it goes on and lists the values that I think are the reasons that people come to Montana. And I would submit that these are the studies from this our state tourism board are again factual support for denial of any need for this type of zoning amendment. I would also like to reiterate that the staff report that is before you has failed to provide any analysis of a build out. And a build out analysis is a common tool used by planners to look at not only what would one specific application of this requested conditional use impact, but what would the cumulative impact be over time of the build out. And there is no analysis of that. I think while the emphasis by the applicant is that they're not asking for any indoor uses, What needs to be analyzed is the cumulative impact of retreat centers, bed and breakfasts, which are indoor facilities that could complement a recreational facility in a massive development, as well as I understand that the zoning administrator would have the ability to speak to other accessory uses if this zone change was approved. So I would ask that you deny this application. I do not think that it is it has been made clear that the protest provision is no longer recognized by the Montana legislature or the courts. And I think it's appropriate for you to act on the hearing record before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
My name is Jim Schneiders. My wife and I are residents in Table Bay. And I'd like to just let us know we're strongly opposed to this, as is all of our neighbors. And we agree with everything that's been said so far today. And also just highlight the fact that, you know, this large turnout, it seems large, is actually much bigger than this, because this is, you know, we're talking about a work day. People that still work, it's hard to get time off to attend a Zoom meeting. But I think that the actual people who live here, the fact you have this many turning out and show up in person is actually just the tip of the iceberg. And we're all strongly against this, and we hope you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I'd like to make a couple of comments, please.
Name, please.
This is Michael Naff. My wife and I, Nancy, live across the road from Subdistrict C and Subdistrict A, and have for quite a few years. I made comments to the commissioners and to the planning board in written form recently, and I'd like to add a couple of comments. Lots of folks from all over the country and Montana come here for what we have in the Upper West Shore and other parts of Flathead Lake. I think it is disingenuous and arrogant to buy property in an area knowing it is subject to zoning and then believe we would be gullible enough to allow the amendment to pass and commercially developed property opposed by the vast majority of people impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I would.
Yes.
My name is Tonya Guys, and I own a home in Goose Bay, 18622 Goose Bay Road. And we oppose this. I think, as Carly Dixon put it, you would be taking a diamond and making it a rhinestone by doing this. But most importantly, this is, as everyone has said, a very, very dangerous stretch of highway. My dad, when I bought the home, said, you know, that's called Blood Alley there. And it's true. Every summer I see horrific accidents, especially by the West Shore State Park. I send my girls to the Glacier Presbyterian camp, and they have to cross that road to do the horse riding. And I don't think I could send them to camp if you guys approve this. I worry about them crossing the road the way it is. So I think the people have spoken, and yes, there are tons more that couldn't be on the Zoom because of work. So you're elected to represent the people, and I hope you will consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yes, I would like to speak, please.
Name, please.
This is Mary Monahan. I am a local resident in Johns Lake Shore Drive, and I do appreciate what Jim said. I'm actually at work. I'm trying my best to participate, but I did send in an email with my concerns. I am vehemently opposed to the rezoning for many of the reasons which have already been stated, but I just want to state for the record that I am another local resident very much opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
May I add one comment?
Name, please.
Ingrid Levers. Only one thing that I didn't hear mentioned, and maybe I did not hear it, but with regard to this being a very steep piece of land, There is also the concern about erosion, and with such a large project, they're talking about deforestation of a large chunk of land in order to put something which they describe as an alpine slide or an alpine coaster and other activities. And many times businesses do start up with great optimism thinking it's going to be a fabulous success. Well, there's a lot of opposition here. If it's not a success and they put it in and it fails, you have a huge blight on the scenery, and it would not come back for decades if it ever would look normal again. So that's something to consider as well. I certainly am opposed to any change in zoning, but anything like that should have a massive deposit with the county to remediate the problem that they would cause and leave everybody holding the bag. Because there's no guarantees. Also, it would really change the ambiance as you drive through there. People don't bring their children and families here so that they can plug in and have more stimulation. They come here to get away from that. And so that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I'd like to speak. Yes, my name is Jennifer Coyle. My husband and I would like it on record that we are opposed to any change in the districting for commercialization. And the views all along that road are magnificent. Any time of the year that you go along that road, it's just breathtaking, as everyone knows. But we'd like to have that maintained. And I'm afraid that any development, large development like that along the hillside would really scar up. So thank you for considering everyone's viewpoints and taking them in your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, my name is Sandra.
Hello.
Hello, my name is.
The female.
Go ahead.
The female. Name.
Okay, my name is Sandra Wood. My sister spoke already. I'm actually up at the lake right now and just arrived with my father, who's been coming here for 65 summers. Prior to that, my grandfather and great-grandfather came here in the early 1900s, and we've been making this route every year for the same reason that I've heard my neighbors speak, which is there's this unusual, extravagant beauty that we come here particularly to gather with neighbors, and you can just tell the neighborhood that's here by how fast we had to react to information that the Planning Commission had or at least the planning staff had far longer than those whose lives it's going to affect. So the neighborhood here is a kind neighborhood, though we're stirred up right now to know what we might lose that's unchangeable. I personally, our family does not agree that the process should be kicked off by one family who stands to profit from it while the rest of us stand to lose historic tradition, property values, quality of life, and sanctuary. So I personally don't understand the process that might allow that to happen when, as someone previously stated, this family who I've not met and get to know if I could, but I can't. So at this moment, all I can say is I don't understand the process that would lead you to a neighborhood that clearly knows why their multi-generational families have been coming here. And before asking us, or perhaps even asking the market demand, decided to try to change what already exists. So I'm on the record for my family to say we disagree strongly with the text change, but also the idea of the change and the process for the change. I was informed by email by my neighbors and by no other way. So to even get on Zoom or publicly participate at all hours of the night, it really took a community to do that. And that's what's on the phone today, is a community of people who, that's part of what makes this zone so special. So I'd like to go on the record as saying not this particular project on this particular parcel of land when this Lake County is vast. I just came from St. Ignatius up here, said, wow, that's all Lake County. Surely there's another place that this project could bring revenue to this county, but this project at this time, at this place is not the right place. And I'm persuaded that the commissioners, you're hearing us, and that as our elected officials, and as you said, you do the right thing for the most people. And I believe with all my heart that that's what you will vote for. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Is there anyone else that would like to speak? With that, we will close the.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Before you public meeting portion, could I ask for 5 minutes?
Yeah, I'm going to just close the comments from the opponents.
Thank you, sir.
So with that, we are closing the comments from the opponents, and you'll have 5 minutes to comment. So go ahead.
Thank you.
And for the record, the Upper West Shore Alliance objects, just for the record.
Okay.
Well, today we've all learned a little bit more about the proposal and about the opposition and the reasons for the opposition. Some of it not new, but some of the nuance helpful to hear. There clearly was a reaction premised on a perception that an amusement park with structures exceeding the allowable heights, even in your current regulations that remain in this sub-district, was going to be installed in a manner that invaded the view shed and that ruined the pristine views and denuded the very vegetation, the timber that an outdoor recreation park would incorporate in its design to maximize and to maintain as a different model of outdoor recreation venue. That's what we were talking about when the application was made for the text amendment, and that's what we're still talking about today. But many of the public comment just doesn't get that, and maybe they never will. They suggest that this should happen somewhere else. One of them even said, not in my backyard. Now, you gentlemen in the commission, you've been in this community. You've been in law enforcement. You've been in education. You've been in finances and tax, and you've addressed the public concern. You were involved in development of the growth policy from the ground up in the hard days and the hard times of the late 90s and 2000s when zoning was a 4-letter word. You've been around here a lot longer to see the growth and the development pattern that has occurred than the folks who are about to move here, moved here a year ago, or moved here 6 years ago from Seattle, who have their house in this zone district, which allows commercial use in some sub-district and conditional commercial use in others, to tell you whether this is consistent with your growth policy and to tell you whether that this is good for your community or not. And I point this out because the terms crazy, silly, insulting, ludicrous, I can take, but when people accuse me and my client of being disingenuous, that's when I have to draw the line. That's calling me a liar. That's saying that I knowingly am presenting false information to the board or a false opinion to the public comment here, and I am not, and I would not, because I care about Montana just as much as everybody else who lives here, was born and raised here, and those who chose to relocate here. What I'm asking the folks and what I'm asking the commissioners to do is to focus on the facts of the text of the proposed amendment. It limits and reduces and doesn't even make possible many of the scenarios that much of your public comment addresses as a doomsday scenario for this type of development within this corridor. Clearly, there are some valid concerns about traffic control. There's valid concerns about pedestrian walks, whether people would access this venue by foot or not. Very clearly valid concerns. They have to be addressed in the application process for the particular project. Which also, by the way, the proposed text amendment talks about in the recommendation, limited business hours that might ameliorate some of those concerns. I also want to point out that I'm well aware of 762-203, as is your planning staff, and the review criteria is consistent with that. And I was prepared before I knew that I had 15 minutes. It's in my outline to go through every one of those points, but I didn't have time to do it. I didn't need to because your planning staff addressed most of these issues and the criteria that's stated in that statute. It's even on the front page of their report that references it as well. Whether this is spot zoning or not, I'm not going to give you or the public legal advice. I encourage you to speak with your county attorney and look at that issue if you have questions about that, and seek the advice of someone who is in a position to give that to you. We now have multiple facts, findings of fact and conclusions that have been presented to you from two different public interest groups, the West Side Alliance. We have Kate McMahon who's presented, and we have another attorney who's presented findings of facts. We haven't seen those findings of facts that they have gathered that wasn't premised upon, evidently, the facts or the time frame in which your planning staff had to consider this application or present its recommendation, or for that matter, for which your planning board could consider when it recommended your denial. So I can't rebut those things, but I can tell you it's been a meaningful process for the applicant. And I want to talk about your applicants. It is not Wiegand International. It is a husband and wife who live in Montana, who have an outdoor recreation background, who are uniquely qualified to present this. Jessica has outdoor youth counseling education and service, multiple years of doing that, both paid and volunteer. There's a component that she envisions of a therapeutic application to this outdoor activity. That's why I mentioned the children, not to pull on heartstrings, the benefit to the community that this type of outdoor recreational activity could propose is what motivated the Weddles, not what everyone is assuming is just for money. That's not the case.
Oh, yeah, right.
Hey, quiet.
We're at 7 minutes.
Yeah, these people have no idea what the motives of this individual are. They just assume they know. And so they're going to attack the fear of the motive they have without any base or fact for doing it. Because someone mentioned roller coaster weeks or months ago, and now everyone believes this is about a roller coaster. It's not. It's about exactly what the text amendment and the types of activity that they self-imposed and restricted upon them, or anyone else who would have a parcel of land that would qualify in the sub-district would have to comply with. It is a small scale light application. If you have an alpine slide, you're not going to cut all the trees down. You want to keep the beautiful trees for people to fly and slide by. It just, that is logic, okay? The other, I'm going to finish up here. The other common theme is many that you've heard from came. They stayed and recreated. They then acquired their lots and their land. And now they don't want something in their backyard. We have one, at least with respect to this parcel. We have one individual, and I told you that there is one property in my opening remarks that would be affected because it is adjacent to, next to. There is also a ridge line and a partial drainage that creates a ridge line to that
I would
next
like to point out that the lawyer is at his time.
property. I'm about to finish up, sir. And there will be fencing requirements. There will be buffer requirements. And the Weddles will have fencing around this because they also want to keep people who are not authorized to be on this commercial application outside of the property. So I encourage you to again look at the.
Your time is up.
Knock it off. You'll be muted. You'll be shut off.
Mr. Chairman, I'm about finished, truly. If you look at the limitations within the proposed text amendment, about 70 to 80% of the concerns raised by the public would not exist. The conditional use would not be permitted if those concerns were valid. And I ask you to look at the recommendation and the analysis of your planning staff. In the record, that is premised on fact, not fear and not assumption, and make a courageous decision. Thank you.
Okay,
I let the record show that the attorney for the applicant was given well over 5 minutes.
Can I let the record show?
no,
Jessica,
quiet, you'll address me.
Sorry, the Whittles never yelled at anyone during the planning board meeting or during this meeting for anyone going over. I would just like to make that a record.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I didn't check my watch. I try to limit my comments. Thank you.
So with that, we will move on to the board discussion. Gail, do you have any comments you want to make?
Yes, I do. Just for the record, Lindsay, and I apologize for your last name, Romantica.
Yeah.
How many findings of facts have you previously written, documents, findings of facts for a development proposal?
You know, I'm not a certified planner. I looked at Kate McMahon, who is, and summarized her findings. But that's just a guide to help.
No, I just asked you that question. Previously, how many findings of facts have you ever written for an amendment request or a planning proposal?
I have about 20 to 30 findings of fact that I've written for boards just like yours.
Including for our growth policy amendment that was proposed from Whitefish.
Yeah, I mean, several, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tiffany, how long have you worked for Lake County in the planning department?
For Lake County specifically, about 3.5 years.
And how many findings of facts have you written?
Well, we have board meetings once a month and anywhere between 1 to 3 reports per month in those 3.5 years.
Mr. Feisner, did you help write the findings for Miss Murphy?
I assisted.
And how many years have you been writing findings?
I've been with Lake County almost 7 years.
And Mr. Congdon, our civil attorney back here, how many years have you been writing findings of fact?
37.
So I just want the record to show that the findings of fact as done by the Lake County planning staff, there's a significant number of years that went into years of experience that went into writing those facts. You know, I just think, you know, a lot of this discussion, we strayed from what has been brought before us. You know, we have a proposal to amend a zoning district. We don't have any kind of a proposal as to what the development is. So a lot of people, I think, we're asking us to, you know, make a decision based on something that we don't have a proposal yet. What we have is a text amendment to a zoning district. Now, the public comment, personally, I've read every public comment that came in. I think under state law, Title 76, for the commissioners to review the amendment proposal, 1, we take into account public input, we take into account the staff report, and 3, the findings of the planning board. There's no weighting of those 3 legs of the stool. You know, there's not one leg that's more important than the other leg, as I read it. Some of the comments that we received, you know, they were still so speculative.
Windows want to build a Disneyland park. More tourists equal more fires. 40,000 new people have moved into our area due to COVID. The development will raise 17 acres of lush forest. I'm not opposed to those types of businesses. I just don't want them in my neighborhood. If this ridiculous theme park is approved, the animals will disappear. So those comments, when I read them, I discounted it. They're pure speculation. They're not based on any facts. They have nothing to support them. Now, the other comments, there were some that, you know, I paid particular attention to. Ms. McMahon has a long background in land planning and analysis. And so those comments, you know, again, carried more weight. I paid more attention to them. There were a lot of references to the Lake County growth policy. As commissioners, Commissioner Barron and myself, we were both on the board when that growth policy was written or rewritten. We wrote, as commissioners, we wrote the introduction to the growth policy. And on page 2 in the growth policy, we stated, we feel it is important that the county encourage growth of businesses, provide better jobs, improve housing options, write land use regulations that are fair and equitable while trying to address the rising cost of property taxes. When making decisions related to land use in the county, the commissioners are committed to protecting the rights of individual property owners that are under the county's jurisdiction. That's on page 2 in the introduction. On page 21, land use policies balance individual rights guaranteed by the state constitution with overall community welfare. There were, you know, references to section 5.1.2 about reviewing development proposals, respect the landowner wishes to get enjoyment and economic return out of their lands, but at the same time ensure that the enjoyment and value of neighboring land is not unreasonably compromised by development projects. That was raised. None of the findings raised 5.1.1 that states when making land use decisions uphold provisions of the United States and Montana Constitution that protect private property rights as well as the state constitutional rights of other area property owners to a clean and healthy environment. And then Article 2, Section 29 of the Constitution state, that is, private property shall not be taken or damaged for public use without just compensation to the full extent of the loss. A person's individual property rights have become secondary to the neighbors acting through their legal representatives. So, you know, I think one of the things that has come up regarding property rights, I agree, the neighboring landowners have property rights, but the Weddles have property rights also. Another misconception I think has come out is that some people seem to think that property rights accumulate the longer you own a property. I've had property east of Pablo since 1959. I have a neighbor that moved in 2 years ago. I have no more property rights than he does. He likes to shoot loud guns. I don't like it, but I like to do things he probably doesn't like either. So, you know, as a longtime landowner, I can't go to him and say, you can't shoot your guns because I don't like it because I've owned my property since 1959. It just doesn't work that way. The petition. I can't put any I don't know what you want to call it. I can't put any weight to the petition. The misinformation that was conveyed in the language of that petition, due to the massive scale of construction, entire ecosystems could be displaced. The speed and the secrecy at which this development plan has been pushed. There is no development plan. It hasn't been secret. People have had the opportunity to be notified. They've had the opportunity to comment. The park would extend across the bend from West Shore State Park all the way to Table Bay on the mountainside. The park would not be 4,400 acres. Whoever wrote that preface to that petition, they would have failed my 8th grade math class on how to write a petition that doesn't include all kinds of emotions and bias. I'm also a little bit resentful of the 3 trees they killed to deliver it all to us. Just quickly, some other, what I think is misinformation. We are adamantly opposed to the current rezoning request, no matter how limited now or in the future. There has been 6 previous zoning amendments to that district. A few years ago, while I was on the commission, we amended it to use, to allow church camps and church retreats as a conditional use. We got very, very little opposition to that. No one mentioned traffic congestion. No one mentioned noise from jet boats. There was very little opposition to it. But now we have a lot of opposition, obviously. By allowing commercial development in the area, no matter how limited in the onset, the county government would be going back on its promise. There is already commercial development in this area. Bed and breakfast, VRBOs. If you think VBROs don't produce congestion, more traffic, safety, emergency services requests, then you haven't been sitting in this office for the past 6 or 8 years. Either commercial development is prohibited or it is not. I agree. Commercial development in that district, it may say it's currently prohibited, but there is commercial development in that district. The commissioners are elected to do what you can to promote and protect the interests of your constituents and listen to our concerns. The Weddles are also our constituents.
So one person gets
to have access to the amendment proposal process, to deny them the right to bring forth an amendment proposal. The commissioners cannot do that. Every property owner in that district has the right to bring forth a proposed amendment change. It's in under Article 9 of the zoning regulations for Subdistrict C. There is a process to amend it, and the regulations, the rules have been amended in the past. So for those that say, I don't know why we're even considering this, this is ridiculous, we can't do it. It's a denial of their ability to bring forth an amendment proposal.
Excuse me for interrupting, Gail. Can you hear me, Bill and Gail?
Comment period.
It's Dave.
Oh, Dave,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to, before their time runs out, I'd like to move to extend our hours of business. We're supposed to get over by 4:30. I'd propose that we extend it another 15 minutes so that we can finish up here.
I would,
not just get in a no man's land of whether it's legal or not for us to vote on it.
Okay, it's officially 4:28, and there's been a motion made to extend our hours of operation.
I would second that.
There's been second by Gail. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
That concludes my remarks.
Dave?
I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's fine. All right, do you have any comments you want to make? Dave, you're muted.
Sorry, I have no comment, but I'm prepared to vote.
Okay. You know, this is obviously a very emotional, very controversial issue. Unfortunately, the law doesn't recognize whether you've lived there for a year or 50 years. When you have property in a subdivision in zoning like that, you all have the same rights. The widows have the right to bring this amendment forward, just like anybody, like Gail said, in that sub-district has this right. There's a process we go through, and everybody's guaranteed their right to go through that process, and that's what this is all about. The commissioners and the people that put this zoning together back in the day, I think were very wise to allow for amendments to take place. Because when you do something 20 years ago, you don't know what it's going to be like now or what kind of issues you're facing. We have one area where they put in zoning, but they never ruled out helipads. Well, there's an individual who wants to put a helipad in, and they never foresaw that in the past. So that's why you have the ability to do amendments, is to deal with things that might be detrimental or might be good for your area. I really don't, in my opinion, think this is spot zoning. It addresses the entire sub-district. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but you can look at it a lot of different ways. There are a lot of issues that were brought up today. Some of mine are the emergency services and the public safety. I served 30 years in public safety and law enforcement and worked a lot with fire departments and ambulances. My concerns would be more along the road issues and the safety and the time to respond. The volunteer fire departments respond to the stations in their private cars. Well, they don't have lights and sirens on them. Some will have lights, but when you're traveling bumper to bumper traffic, when I worked for the Polson Police Department, we had firemen that couldn't get to the fire station across the bridge. It just creates a lot of issues when it's volunteer. If it's a paid facility, a paid force, they get in their fire truck, they're at the station already, and they turn on their lights and sirens and they respond. We have volunteer ambulances where people have to respond to the station to get the ambulance. They don't always have a 24-hour access to it. And those are safety things that really I think about a lot. I'm curious, did you investigate the zoning before you bought the land? Yes.
We were not told by our realtor explicitly that it was just residential. We did ask, and we were told incorrectly, but.
Okay. So when you bought it, you thought it was available?
We didn't, so we took the realtor's word for it, which is the wrong move. I should have investigated it more. But it is, it's a very secluded piece of property. And that's why we also chose it, not knowing that it was commercial, that it was only residential. We hand-picked this piece of property specifically because we thought it would be very secluded and not be an eyesore for everyone around it.
Okay. And your hope is to make this a year-round facility?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We would have more of a shoulder season, which would be more weekend. It's similar to what some people are trying to do up in that area. Some have to close down because there's nobody.
What would your hours of operation be?
Whatever you tell me they can be.
So if we put in conditions that you had to have a fire station on site and a security officer and an EMT on site, are those conditions that you would entertain?
I definitely could have a wilderness first responder. I don't know if I can have I mean, yes, we can make it happen. I would think that we would have to employ people who are volunteer firefighters on their volunteer time.
There's, you know, when we talk about property values, I don't think anybody can honestly say whether this is going to help or hurt property values. Right now in Lake County, you can sell your doghouse for $100,000. I mean, it's crazy. There's nothing to buy. Prices have gone completely haywire. There's just different things like that. We have, well, you know, I guess at that, I'll just leave it at that for right now. And I will entertain a motion.
First, Mr. Chairman, I would like to address the findings of fact that our planning staff came up with. They begin on page 5 of the planning board report. I agree that the planning board just disagreed with what the Lake County planning staff findings of facts. I don't think, I think there was just an agreement there, disagreement there rather. So on 5A, conformity to the 2018 Lake County growth policy, I would like to amend that finding by adding section 5.1.1 that I referenced. Also, I would like to put in that finding amended to state that 82% of the taxes generated in Lake County are generated from residential properties. And that is the second highest rate in the state of Montana. And that's one of the reasons why we are encouraging economic development. Part B, congestion in the streets. You know, I don't think that needs amending. I spent quite a bit of time looking at the city of Leavenworth when they went through this same type of adventure park proposal. And the city of Leavenworth wrote in their findings, with mitigation, traffic impacts will not be injurious to the public health, safety, welfare, comfort, or convenience of the public. Again, I'm not asking for amendment. I'm just want that on the record. C, I don't have any question with that. D, it mentions the noise pollution. I pulled up the noise report that was done for the Leavenworth facility. This was a report that was produced by an SE group. Again, I don't know. He's the director of environmental services. Anyhow, it referenced the alpine coasters. Carts are generally considered to make little noise. Coaster rides generate an average of 65 decibels for listeners 50 feet away, which is comparatively similar to normal speed at 3 feet away. Based on this data, impacts to existing ambient noise levels are expected to be minimal. E, I think planning staff just referenced that a condition of approval, it's already in in the regulations that the lights have to be downward pointed and side shielded. F, I don't think there's any change there. G, I don't think anything else there. You know, I, on page 10, does a requested zone give reasonable consideration to the peculiar suitability of the property for particular use? You know, I personally agree with the planning staff. It appears that the conditions may very well be suited for the proposed amendment. J, Commissioner Barron already addressed the value of the buildings. So with the amendment that I suggested for A, under the staff findings of fact, with the addition of that language to the amendment, I would make a motion to adopt the Lake County Planning Department's findings of fact with an amendment to item A to include Lake County Growth Policy Section 5.1.1 and also the 82% of the taxes generated in Lake County come from residential properties.
Okay, there's been a motion made. Dave, you gonna
I'll second the motion.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded to approve the report with the amendments that were made by Gail. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, I would like to have Mr. Congdon, our civil attorney, discuss Senate Bill 294, what the ramifications are to the county and the process. I think there's been a lot of confusion about what the process is. I know I personally gave some wrong information to folks. I believe there was this protest period that was still in effect, and that if we had 40% of the landowners protest, they could stop this process. But Senate Bill 294 did away with that provision. So I'd like to hear your interpretation of what happens next if.
Having talked to a number of people about this today at Mako, the reality is there was a case in Missoula 8 years ago that said the right to protest in circumstances goes away. So there's this kind of willy-nilly pattern. Since then, nobody really knew what we do, what we not do, where did it go. So the legislature just passed a law that got signed May 3rd and became effective immediately. Basically, it said that's it. So what it said is this, that if there's a zoning district created or changed, real property owners in a zoning district can submit a referendum from the persons that own property in the district to have a vote on the zoning district. And that's an interesting question. So now suddenly we can vote on the zoning district by referendum, not protest, but vote. The interesting part, though, is it says, fine, there's also a separate procedure, which is I think what Gail's really talking about more, because the new procedure says this, and this basically is this. This is not a change of the district. What the commissioners passed is a resolution of intention to do that. And once that passes, for 30 days after the first publication of a notice to do that, the Board of County Commissioners will receive written comments on the creation of the zoning district or the change, as the case may be, from persons owning real property within the district whose names appear on the last completed assessment roll of the county. So all the persons who own a parcel of land in subdistrict C of this zone for 30 days after publication of notice of this intent have a right to comment to the commissioners. and those commissioner comments will be read by all the commissioners. And that's the rules. And then after that occurs, then within 30 days after the expiration of the comment period, the commissioners may at its discretion adopt the district change or not. So there's a period of time wherein they'll do a publication, then 30 days of comment from the owners in the district, and then 30 days to make a decision that's final. So that's the process we're in now.
But Wally, if it goes to a referendum by the people in the district, if they vote 51% against it, that would kill it.
It repeals the district. So the question is, says this, I'm going to read you that. The zoning district to terminate the zoning district. So it doesn't say it terminates the change. The way the statute's written, it says it terminates the zoning district. So if that's the case, if it was done that way, you read it the way it's literally written, what it says is, if they pass the question of actual amending the district, and you do a referendum, and 51% of people vote, we don't want this district, you are now unzoned.
No one wants that.
No, I'm just telling you, I don't like this way the statute's written, but what Bill's saying to you appears to be how they wrote it. So that being the case, the process is a question mark right there. Nobody's questioned it, it just asked me for 2 weeks ago. But the important part is, once this is published, people that own land within the district have 30 days to comment to the commissioners.
Or they can file suit to challenge the decision today.
I have a question,
Mhm.
because I think the way the new bill is written, that before the petition can be brought forward, the landowner that's wanting to change or remove the zoning district needs to get 20% of the landowners in the zoning district to sign a petition with them.
That is not in this statutory section.
It's not in the beginning of it. I thought I
Nope.
had read it in this.
That's to create a referendum.
Okay.
That's not the question of this, that's the referendum process. There's this. So the other thing the person who taught it for 20 years at the law school and the graduate school would say is, your point's well taken, we can file a lawsuit today to shut it down. And what I'd say is, good luck, because what I'm going to answer that with for the commissioners is going to be simple, and Tara Dupuy would do the same thing. There is no final decision.
Yeah,
You have not exhausted your remedy until they've decided. And Gail's point about process is well taken. So if you sue us tomorrow, guess what? We have not got a final decision. So you've now denied them process, and that's you behaving unconstitutionally in my world. So I'd say,
No, we would wait for the final decision.
do it the other way. Thank you. Yeah, because that way, what we've done is guaranteed the process that they are well acquainted with, that everybody's entitled to.
And we'll see how that.
That's right.
Well, just a minute, if we can finish here.
Yeah.
Don't everybody assume that if a resolution of intent to adopt this amendment change, that in 30 days, we're going to automatically approve it. We do resolutions of intent on a regular basis. It is not an automatic approval in 30 days. We've had resolutions of intent that we've said, no, we're not moving this process forward. It's done. We've had resolutions of intent that we've said, yes, we're going to move it forward. Personally, what I want to hear from the people within Sub-District C. We heard from 36,000 people. If I represent the Ronan Pablo district, if I did a referendum there as to whether or not people would like an adventure park in Rollins, it would be 90% approval. You bet I want to take my kids up there. I've got a zip line on my private property. I'd love to have a place where I could take my grandkids on a zip line. I want to hear from the people in Sub-District C before I make a final decision.
And what Gail said is in the statute. It says the commissioners may, in its discretion, adopt a resolution or not. So it's not a done deal by doing a resolution of intent. It's its discretion after the comment period to do so or not do so. That's their discretion. That's the rules.
We're not open for questions right now. Sorry. we're in the commissioner discussion, so. Any other comments?
This is Dave. Yeah, that's my comment, is what we've done does not
Comment. I don't know how to
give an
do it.
improvement,
So
give
if
an
you can help me,
approval.
that would be great.
This isn't an approval of the park. This is just part of the process. And so don't freak out. And people, for some reason, took off on this process, not understanding the process. And they were protesting stuff that hadn't been petitioned for yet. And we have to go through the process.
Okay, if you don't know how to do it, I understand
You
that.
can type right there though to everyone.
Phones, we're getting a bunch of feedback.
Yeah, sorry, I don't.
No, you're fine, Dave, you're fine. We had other people talking on their phones and we couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to explain. People took off on this with some bad advice and were protesting something that wasn't meant to be protested yet. So we have to go through the process, and that's what we're gonna do.
So are we ready for a motion? I will entertain one.
I would make a motion that the commissioners approve a resolution of intent to approve the amended language of the Upper West Shore zoning district, subdistrict C, to allow for commercial uses as a conditional use.
I'd second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. And I'll tell you why I'm opposing it. It's not that I don't want to have everybody have their voice. I think there's just issues that coming from public safety that really concern me. And, you know, we have a 75 mile or 70 mile an hour speed limit up there right now. That will change. I mean, I'm on a technical design committee with the state of Montana on roads, and that speed limit will drop. It'll be lowered. I'll be surprised if it doesn't drop to 45 mile an hour. There'll be coming out of, when I came out of, well, I've been up to Whitefish 2 or 3 times in the last few days, and the traffic on that road is amazing to me. To get from Kalispell to Whitefish, from Kalispell to Lakeside, there was a string of cars bumper to bumper that were doing like 15 to 20 mile an hour. It was crazy. I heard my little brother complain about it up there, but I hadn't experienced it like that. Once you got past Lakeside, it opened up a little bit, but it was still a huge issue. And there's no plans to do anything with that road in any major kind of way for 15 to 20 years. The traffic and the congestion is going to get worse and worse. I'm really concerned about firefighters and ambulance people trying to respond to their stations to get fire trucks and ambulances. We're lucky in this area because our ambulances are manned 24 hours a day. We have a private company and they take the ambulance home with them. They take it to the restaurant. They take it grocery shopping. They're in it all the time. That luxury isn't afforded a lot of these rural areas. There's, you know, the theme park itself is carbon free, which I think is great. That's good. But the things that it will bring aren't going to be. And some of them have been hit on. I mean, you're going to have people slowing down, stopping, and then accelerating away. These are the areas where vehicles get the poorest fuel economy and create the most carbon, the most pollution and stuff like that. Property values, I don't think we can say one way or the other. Right now, it's zoned for one house. That 17 acres is zoned for one house, maybe 2 with some variances and stuff you might not be able to get to. Switching to a 17-acre theme park is a huge variation from one house. And those are just issues I have right now that are causing me to vote against it. And with that, that will conclude the meeting at this time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for everybody's input. And now that we're off the record, I expect to get sued no matter which way the decision goes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the process.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity.
I thought it was you when I called you off.